I have to like turn on. Like I have like I'm an introvert. I'm a very outgoing introvert. I'm a very charismatic introvert. But at the end of the day, I lose energy interacting with people. Like it
Hmm.
takes it from me. You have people out there who just like they're succubi and they just like absorb energy the more they interact with humans. That is not me. And
Nor me, actually.
really,
One of the interesting things that I think people think, because I'm quite social and obviously because of events and generally if you see me, but I specifically remember actually the very first time I did LVO for Games Workshop. Actually, I had a 2 day absolutely like cannot communicate with people. I was like done. There's like a if I know that there's a an out, whether that be 4 days or 7 days, or there's a point where I can turn off.
hmm
I can go for pretty much ever. Um, but that was it. I felt awful
hmm
that Monday. I felt awful because it's a lot of people, and also like at that point, also you're representing a company, so there's a certain level of professionalism you have to have. There's also winning hearts and minds, which is a huge part of the role I was a part of then. So like there was a lot to take on and be a part of, and so I switched off. And so I actually no different,
yeah,
to be honest. That's why I really love Warhammer. Warhammer was always my escape actually from the world
really,
because it's quiet.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and
got that. Oh, continue.
no, I was just going to say, and then I made it loud for myself, like an idiot.
Well, yeah, you've been. I mean, I guess I'll go ahead. I see chat gangs all shown up here, so might as well do the pitch. What's up, chat gang? I am, of course, the magical Mr. Mephisto, the most dangerous man in Age of Sigmar, a moniker bestowed upon me by Vince Venturella, and you have your own moniker. Our guest tonight has his own moniker bestowed
Several, I
by
think.
Vince, but one by Vince in particular. It's the Warhammer terrorist, is it not?
that
uh,
was one. That was
Rob
one. He
Rob
liked, yeah,
Symes,
he
yeah,
liked.
yeah. So he's joining us tonight. This is of course, episode 58. We're going to be talking tSports. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about the tSports Network and of course the Super Series, which I think has got like the community pretty tantalized right now.
Hmm.
But uh, but the real important
Thank.
thing. You go ahead.
I was just going to say thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. But the real hot goss that's going to go down tonight is we're going to talk about stick fighting.
Sure, sure, sure. It's my brother took up skateboarding, and I see him. My brother actually doesn't live very far from me, and he took up skateboarding. He's cool. There are skate shops. Like he's got the clothes. It's like even during lockdown, they're hanging out at the park. They're being cool. Like he's just living his best life. And I'm like, I don't know if you've ever smelled anyone who's done stick fight for an hour or so. It stinks,
Mhm.
and it's just not cool in any way. I don't think anyone's ever thought it was cool. So he definitely was a lot smarter than me. But that's
So he went with the skateboarding, and you're like, nah, I'm going to hit people with sticks. And
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't actually how I got into it. If you're interested, I
I know I am. I know. No, because I think there's a thread here because this is a competition. You did this on a competition level, and as you port over to tSports, like I think that there's a valid sort of like core thread there of like competing and. Anyone in any form of competition will tell you that there's a mental game. Even Age of Sigmar's got that mental game, and obviously when you're about to go into a like actual combat with somebody, you got to have like your mental faculties together, right?
Well, yeah, I got loads of stories on that. Um, I got into stick fighting is Filipino stick fighting. So it's Screamer Cali Arnis, if anyone's interested. ESKRIMA, Screamer Cali Arnis. Um, and it's a Filipino martial art, predominantly perfected because when the Philippines was invaded by the Spanish in the 1700s, they outlawed bladed weapons from being held. So the Filipinos would do dancing and they would like practice with sticks because they weren't allowed to practice with bladed weapons. I mean, obviously they were secreting stuff. Later on, when the Japanese invaded as well, same rules were applied. So the Philippines has had like a very tough like history. If no one knows much about the Philippines, and incredible people as well. But very interestingly, about the Filipinos. Oh, I'll get onto that later. Well, the interesting thing about the invasion of the Spanish and the invasion of the Japanese is both of those styles of swordplay, as they were, are linear. So they go in straight lines. So if you picture your classic fencer going back and forth in a line,
Right.
same with anyone with a katana in a straight line back and forth.
Yeah.
So they have they're very linear, and Filipinos fight in circular motion, very much like the Sikhs. I don't know if anyone even knows there are Sikh martial arts, but the Sikhs also practice a circular form of martial arts, which is awesome, cool, by the way, and really, really fun. But how I got into it was I was working in a shop late at night. I grew up as a pretty poor kid, so I was doing a graveyard shift because they always paid more money. And I read an article about Bruce Lee. And I'd seen him on TV and films, but I read an article about Bruce Lee and I was like blown away. And then I went and found an instructor that taught Jeet Kun Do, which is Bruce Lee's martial art. And he also did.
You know what's really funny about this is I did Jeet Kun Do for 7 years. I never got to a competitive level. So as you're like talking this, I'm just like connecting some of the dots. I said before, we're a lot more similar than we are different, even though we've had some like differing opinions over the like I guess now years at this point. But yeah, no,
I think
my instructor
refused.
Yeah, my instructor refused to call it Jeet Kune Do, or like because the whole Bruce Lee thing is like having no form as your form, having no style as your style. Like it's just martial arts. It's just fighting. He was sort of at the precursor of what would become MMA, which is just like really all fights end on the ground. Like you have your three ranges of combat essentially, which is like your kicker weapon length, then you end up in like close range, and then every fight ends on the ground because usually somebody who's getting outclassed at those other two levels is going to charge you and put you to the ground. Like he was in a lot of ways at that like really like predominantly important in what would become MMA. MMA catches on is a relatively yeah. Go ahead.
He is, as they generally call, an enigmatic megafauna. Like he effectively developed and created something way before like it ever was like became common parlance, and also popularized it as well, which is quite fascinating. Like he was a cha-cha champion at the age of 14. He got smuggled out of China and dressed up as a girl. He wrote a book which you can read for the Tower Jeet Kun Do, and was absolutely mental, but was brilliant. So yeah, and finding that was like so my martial arts instructor based in Nottingham, Richard, it was also a Filipino stick fighter, but they came from a very traditional martial arts background. Sorry, not traditional martial arts as you might think of it as a gi or anything like that. He came from like a traditional Jeet Kun Do background, so it was like car park fights, sawdust gyms, like knife fights for life. Like it was just a very scary group of individuals, and as a young man at 18 it was fairly formative for me to meet these people because they were kind, they were dedicated, they were disciplined, they were forthright, which was something I didn't really have as a child. I'd say like I didn't really have that kind of strength of character, which I think these guys gave me. But I think the thing that they taught me more than anything was to respect violence and to understand that violence is the very last thing. Like I've spent all of my adult life trying my hardest to never be violent, but understanding that it's one of the most joyous things to be a part of if you could do it well. Which is a weird juxtaposition. But a really, and I advocate for absolutely everyone to put themselves through that ringer life, because it taught me a great many life lessons which I'll never forget. And Richard will never see this in his life, but big love to him.
Well, I just you kind of mentioned something there, and what I think is really like utterly interesting culturally speaking is we're getting to a point where sport and combat and violence were, not that like they're gone. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of protesting going on, that sometimes there's some violent ends with tearing down statues, which is an act of violence, right? But but like I'm not saying that violence doesn't exist anymore, but we exist in a point in time where we can essentially do sport for the sake of sport and do combat for the sake of combat. We have these venues for all of this, for showcasing that. And in terms of like human history, I mean, that's relatively new. The thousands of years that we've been around, like you actually have sports combat like as a showing off the sort of excellence of achievement and dedication, and not just as a where the stick fighting, they developed it to fight for their lives. And now you can take this thing and go and be competitive with. And I think war games are kind of like in a similar space where like we can compete in a war game, like in a vacuum on the table, sort of divorced from that, like, what were essentially training exercises for field generals and stuff back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I did before I wrote the workbook was I read a book called The Zones of Control, which is a wargaming manual. There's some really, really interesting stuff you can actually do when it comes to wargaming if you just go and look up military wargaming stuff, which is cool. But maybe more on that later. But yeah, you're right. We are in a unique time, and like we're in a more progressive time than we've ever been, and it's cool to see that move forward. I think the thing for me though, if we want to talk about Filipino stack fighting for a minute, that is what I did Tuesdays, Wednesdays for 4 hours. I used to sleep in my gym overnight. Not overnight, sorry. I used to work nights and then sleep in my gym in lunch breaks and train morning and do evenings. I trained 6 days a week, every single day. It was like a monastic lifestyle. I worked and I trained. That's all I did for 3 years. And it was wonderful. It was a really great experience, but eventually I just had no money and I had to go and start earning some actual cash. But stick fighting was only ever my off thing. Mm-hmm. It was only ever fun. And Jeet Kun Do was a really exceptional thing to learn because it's... I don't want to call it street fighting because that's really an inelegant way.
It's very practical. It's very practical combat in a way that, like...
Yeah, it's actually, well, if I can be, it's only practical combat. It's not like there's none, and especially the gym I trained at, and unfortunately the teacher I trained under, it was very very impactful. Like it was only impactful all of the time, and that's where the respect came in, because it's like, well, Jeet Kun Do, Bruce Lee had a quote, and it's just like, you smash my flesh, I break your bones. You break my bones, I'll kill you. Like there's a degree of like escalation which only really happened, and so and that's why violence is something that should be always abhorred and always fought against. And conversation, even if it's conversation between two people who don't agree on a thing, is the most valuable thing that you can have in a society. I don't agree with you, and you don't agree with me. Right. That's excellent. Now you can be violent with language, right? You can try to take someone's rights away just through the power of your voice. Yeah, that is a form of violence. Yeah. But honest to goodness, just two people having a conversation and be like, I don't agree with you, and you don't agree with me, and I respect that, is one of the things that I also learned from martial arts. Well, I think it's
verbally fencing at that point, or verbally sparring, and if you respect individuals enough to, you may not be right and you may not be wrong, and there's some space in between where you're grappling with this conversation, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I've always said there's only three ways you can know a human being. You can fight them, you can fuck them, and you can dance with them. That's it. There's three ways, because you can't hide. That one of my favorite things about those three things. So when you dance with someone, you can't hide. You can't hide yourself. You're too self-conscious to hide who you are. You are who you are. Unless you're an incredible dancer, which almost no one is, you can't obfuscate yourself. You are what you are, right? Like maybe you're a bumbling buffoon, maybe you're not, but like whatever you are, you're something. Same with fucking. Oh, sorry for swearing, if that's okay. No, you're fine, man. Go ham.
Okay. Same with fighting. Like some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, I've hit, and they've hit me. And there's an honesty to it that you can't escape, because it has to be honest, because you don't have time to put on any of the the kind of airs and graces of life, I think sometimes. Anyway, that's stick fighting, I guess. It's quite fun. Yeah. What you guys are interested.
So so at some point, like where does Warhammer come in for you? Like you mentioned, like stick fighting kind of around 18. Like where does Warhammer? Is this something that you always did, or is this something you got into later on?
Oh yeah, I didn't get into it until maybe 7 years ago. 7 years ago. Maybe not even that long. So I just into my 30s. So maybe when I turned 30-ish. Yeah. Having no experience with it, I've got friends. I play World of Warcraft with my friends and Guild Wars and those sorts of things. But tabletop wargaming or physical wargaming isn't something I ever did at any other point in my life. And then I discovered it, and much like when I started doing martial arts, I was like, "This is for me." Mm-hmm. Like, I like all of this. Yeah, I was like, this is because I really liked it. The thing that I didn't like about martial arts after a certain level was that it's a physical sport, which is not a physical. It's not a physical. Stick fighting was a physical sport, but It's a physical thing, and there is an application of the mind. But if you're trained enough, like just
Well, you
a
go into
good,
reflex. I mean, that's the whole reason why you train in martial arts is you essentially go into these reflexes. Hang on a second. Ooh, Tomb King Tristan, thank you so much for 1 year of subs, my friend. You have now ascended to the appropriate badge. Uh, so yeah.
Tristan is such an incredibly upbeat human being all the time. He's wonderful.
He's probably one of my earliest like Warhammer friends, like that
Mm.
I met on the internet, and it was where because I've always been like a big fan of Death Armies, and
Mm.
like Tomb Kings were kind of like the not my Death Army. I went Vampire Counts when the book split, and
Mm-hmm.
Tomb Kings was this other thing. And through knowing Tristan, I learned a great deal of empathy for other players in the community who like maybe play an army I don't play or an army I don't understand or even like armies I don't like sometimes. Like Zinch I is not. I know we're dealing with like the current Zinch menace. I've never liked the army. I hate the just as planned like trope. The like
Mm-hmm.
just as like I don't like that as like a character feature, and that's like all Zinch is. But like by my friend Andrew Yells, we got Alex Milonis here, Dr. Alex Milonis here, who's in like the area. By being able to go, oh, these people I like play this army, so they see something there, and I like them, so there must be some, by extension, the transitive property of thinking you're a bro extends to your army, and now I can like try to see it from your fondness. You're actually on obviously Vince's show. You've been really busy. I think we already kind of covered that, but you were on Vince's show just yesterday, um, and talking about the GHB, and you brought up a point, and this is something I agree with, is like if flamers get nerfed into the ground and
Mm-hmm.
horrors get nerfed into the ground, what else is left for that army?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this like sort of lex retalionis. People feel slighted by Zinch in it because it's way out of bounds, and like they're calling for blood. They want this army nerfed into the ground, and it, I, as someone who possesses empathy, even for armies I don't particularly care for, I'm like, no, that's not the answer. Um,
I
so,
agreed.
so I mean, you pretty much said as much with like the, what's left if not like flamers and horrors. Like, what's left in that book? And
Yeah, and there are options. There are options, but like, uh, so interestingly, and I know we've bumped heads on this, especially over OC arcs,
yeah,
as an example. And I know you don't like my takes on it, and that's okay. Like,
only a couple of them.
that's okay. Like,
The
but
crematorian saying like time is told on that one.
Uh, um, whenever I talk about the game, and actually, I managed to get this out on a show the other day, which has been nice because I've been looking at the game through a very specific lens for maybe like a year and a half, and that has been in regards to the Super Series, right? And it's also been within regards to it being a competitive game. Now, there's a very big conversation which I think you and me would agree on wholeheartedly, in that for a laugh with my mates, Warhammer is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, end point conversation.
Mm-hmm.
However, like there are all sorts of people in our hobby who there are like loud voices that don't necessarily advocate for it. And I've talked about this time and time again that there's two kids actually. Two young lads who live in now. I don't know where the fuck Idaho is, but I just picked that because it's some 80s Americanism for me. Yeah, it's like Stranger Things, Idaho, and a barn. And I picture these two kids. They go in there and they go on the internet and they see stuff and they order a box and they've just got like their Beast of Chaos. He's like, yeah, and then he's got his OCR Bone Reapers, and that guy's just running 3-up armor save because he likes it, and the other guy isn't. And he's just like, why can't I beat this? Like, and because that goes back to my earliest Warhammer experience, in the being the naive young man that I was. I expected the game to be sold as a package that worked, and the truth is, it is not that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about things like I actually think that the +1 save is a negative, or the change host drop is dumb, or the technado is out of order, I think about those new people entering into the hobby because gamers will game and gamers will try to work out the best way of doing
rule,
it.
You're going to push the rules, right? There's a joy. I mean, I consider myself a Johnny. If you're familiar with the
Hmm.
psychographic profiles, I'm pretty much a Johnny. I like to tool things. I love theory craft. I like having an idea and expressing it on the table. Does this work? So on and so forth. That can read a lot like rules lawyering if you do it maliciously. But oftentimes it's like, oh, like I'm gonna look in the book and I'm gonna go, this is the way to do this thing. This is this point I'm trying to prove. How do I make Nagash as viable as possible? And if
Yep.
how I make Nagash as viable as possible, and then you're sitting there with your book and you're like, how do I make Beast of Chaos? And Beast of Chaos is a terrible example because I think it's actually like I have never lost to Bone Reapers with my own Beast of Chaos army. But I
Okay.
they but like the way that you break that or the way that you crack that puzzle looks a lot different from like Lumineth out the box, right? Like how do I make Lumineth really really potent against Bone Reapers? You go, okay, cool, this is what this looks like. But doing it with like post post nerf Slaanesh right now. How do you
Hmm.
even begin to tackle the Bone Reaper problem? You were kind of bouncing off them before. Um, you know, like it's I get where you're getting. It's so not as like a pushback or contrarian, but just to kind of have you flesh out more of this thought. Do you think that like this is a little bit too much of a think of the children kind of take? Like think of the children in the barn. Like do we like
No, because I do this 7 days a week. Now other people do this 2 days a week, and and then even then I would consider those to be fairly committed. And some people just pick up their stuff, like they play a couple of games here and there. They've got busy lives. It's a
Mhm.
very busy world. We've got a lot of pressures, social media, other stuff in our lives. To take up time. Kids. I don't even have that. Like I don't even have to deal with kids. So people have a lot of pressure on their times, and it's a very complicated thing. So like those people who need someone to advocate them a tad is important, because we don't push against if we don't push for something better all the time,
Mhm.
then we won't get anything better. I don't think it's not
Right.
just going to happen by osmosis. And I think it's a valuable lesson, but also be positive. I've just come off having done a 2-hour show with the 40K guys, and we've had a very interesting journey on the 40K show over the past 2.5 years, because I have honestly fallen out of love with playing 40K very early into the edition, maybe like a year in, but also still talked about it when and did coverage. But I am nothing but glowing for the last 2 hours in the show that we did. Glowing. I'm like, this is a game where you can play this game. It's great. Like, it's awesome. And we need to push for those good rules and interactions, but that means we also have to understand what the problems are, right? We have to
Mhm.
break it down. But like, why is this a problem? Like,
Right.
why is the Teclis doing that spell through the portal a problem? It's
Right.
because he just does it and you do nothing. That interaction, it took me maybe a year to even really understand things that I were talking about were interactions and not balance. Interaction is more important to me than balance is important. I've been saying this for a long time now,
Right.
but it took me a long time, because this is what I think talking on these shows does. And as a community
Well,
with
you're
yourself, Twitter, and everyone else, we're developing the ways to analyze this stuff together as a
well.
group.
I think that the thing is it's a little bit of the dogma thing, the Kevin Smith film, where it's like, I
Hmm.
don't have a belief, I have an idea. Like
Hmm.
idea isn't a fixed point in space that is unchanging, unwavering, like a belief is. Like I have an idea of where I think everything should go. And we're all in this community. This is why I consider like content creation collaboration and not so much competition.
Hmm.
Is because you say something on the Honest Wargamer, and then I have to think about what I believe, or Vince says something on his show, and then I have to go, well, where do I come down on this? What do I believe? Where do I think this is? We had a conversation about NPE. I know you and I kind of like briefly did. I had a conversation with Vince about NPE, and I'm like, well, we all have an understanding of what NPE is, negative play experience, right? We have an understanding of what that is. We know the definition, but it's one of those things that kind of exists. Ooh, thank you so much for that Twitch Prime, 5 months, Rocco, yo boy. But it kind of exists in like one of those areas where it's like partially subjective and partially objective, right?
Hmm.
Like NPE, it can be a negative play experience to lose a game. I it
Hmm.
you can feel negatively about losing a game, right? You can
Hmm.
also lose a game and be like, that was the best game I've played all year, right?
Agreed.
Like my fondest memories are actually of like losses, because like they were often very very close games. They came down to the like that last turn. the priority roll or one save off from the model surviving and then I win the game. Things like that. That are the moments that I really stand out for me in my memories of gaming. But, you know, why did this loss feel awesome and exciting versus that loss feel bad and negative? Flipping it, why did this win feel awesome and amazing? Why didn't it feel? Why did I feel dirty getting this win? Why was this win negative? And the best I can distill it down to is meaningful choice. I think NPE removes meaningful choice. I think that's the one commonality, because I do think that, you know, random Facebook conversation, NPE is just things I don't like. For the most, like.
It is. I love those Facebook threads, though. Let me tell you. Sometimes I go on a Facebook thread just to feel better about my day, and I think at least I'm none of you. Right? That's why.
Yeah. Like I just don't like this, you know. And I'm like, that's not NPE. Like, like using Facebook to. But see, my experience with Facebook is the exact opposite. I go on Facebook when I need to hate myself more. But no, like, but that's the common ground I think I found. Now I think that it you can alter your perspective a little bit to have a more positive play experience and a less positive play experience. Like, I just hate Nagash, right? Like, I have blanket sweeping statement. What if he ends up just costing like 800 points and doing nothing? And then, like, I see him and I just hate the game because I hate that model or whatever it is. Like, people have these fixed points that they have these beliefs. My goal, we talk about like some of the things that we agree on and we disagree on. My goal is often to just like present information to people and then let them make their call. Not telling you what to think, teaching you how to think. You know, that's my whole spiel. That's my whole thing. When it comes to NPE, my biggest sticking point on meaningful decision, it starts at list building. Meaningful decisions begin at list building, or rather, the question of meaningful decisions should begin at list building. Now, I'm not dissing you if you net list. I don't possess that animosity that some other people do, where there's this like negativity for net listing. I don't.
You'd have to define net listing for me.
Going on the internet and like, okay, someone won a tournament with this city's a Sigmar list, so then I just like make that army and I take that to a
So
tournament.
Do you see that as a negative?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't, because we all have different skill sets. I'm a very good theory crafter and list builder. Really good at meta predictions. Like, those are my talents. I'm a less skilled pilot. You know, like, a lot of my powers are on the mental side of things, and sometimes, like, piloting in the moment, I tunnel vision. You know, like, I know the macro. I can stand back and, like, you know, I play a hell of a StarCraft game, but when it, like, zooms down to, like, clicking the thing in League of Legends and being really fast with the buttons, I lose sight of that sort of thing. I think net listing can form parity. It creates known commodities. I think what we need to do is develop more of an archetypal view of armies, as opposed to, like, you know, oh, I played against Beast of Chaos. Okay, what does that mean? You played against 9 cockatrices?
Yeah.
Like, I played against Tzeentch. When you say I played against Change Host, now you're getting more archetypal. You're getting more. You're beginning to inform the decision, or you're beginning to inform the way people interact with and think about that when you have them with a more pointed archetypal view, as opposed to like a broad, I played against Bone Reapers. Well, even if you say I played against Petrifex Elite, did they have catapults? Did they bring Gothazar Harvesters? Was it Nagash Petrifex Elite? Like, things like that. I think net listing helps you have known commodities, and I think that's actually a positive.
It is, and also if you can identify. So one of the things we've been talking a lot on the 40k show about, which is oftentimes my think tank, helping me bounce ideas. So big shout out to Tom and Nick, because we've gone down some really weird and interesting. What do words mean? What does this mean? And identifying roles. So you can effectively talk about lists, units in lists in roles, and then lists as, like you say, archetypes to a degree. And it's really valuable to understand that that's a great way to identify units. And it actually came up a lot when we just reviewed the GHB just gone. One of the ways that we talked about the points changes was internal and external parity. And internal parity is actually really, really important but something that's overlooked a lot, and it's actually one of my probably one. Go on.
Before you move on, do you want to define internal parity in case like people may not know? Because like we're getting like into some terminology that's
Sure.
really
So
what you mean by internal parity, right?
Okay, so based on roles, so you have units that do things, a support piece, something that deep strikes, etc. So they have a role in your army, and and some of them they're not kill things. So you have roles, and there are different games, different roles. But inside that, so therefore a book, usually Lumineth is a really good example of where they've almost got quite a few things that are in different roles, or they're different enough, but not quite, not anywhere near the same. The worst version is something like KO, where it all does the same. It all shoots. So it's in the role of shooting, and that's not quite true because you can put guys inside the boat, so they have a different role, but they all shoot. So the internal parity is actually, well, just what shoots best for my points. Or what shoots best and survives for my points is that. So the problem sometimes in books is you have units that should do the same thing, or they do same-ish things, but their points are way off, right. And therefore, all their abilities are different. Like I still to this day mourn the loss of the Wrathmonger. Because the Wrathmonger, well, I mean, they're still there.
It's old. It's what it used to do was something interesting, and what it does now is woo dice. Like, who cares?
It does nothing. It does nothing. And that's one of the really wonderful things about Age of Sigmar. Like, I really like the Calathar for Lumineth. It's a cool, it's powerful rules interaction.
You're talking about the bravery bomb, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ability to switch the bravery. So again, a different role, a different subset. So it's almost impossible to externally point at all. And it's also unique inside its own book, which is cool. And Wrathmongers were fairly the same. But when you get stuff that's just like, this is Warriors of Chaos, obviously, versus Marauders, they're melee units. And it's like, okay, these have got better armor save, okay, but these have got output that's so good versus their terrible output that I'll never take those.
Their offense is the best defense when you're talking Marauders. Like, why have the extra bodies and just murdering your things first is, that's a way better role than just this traditional knight tank and spanks keep back unit. You brought up.
Hold on. Can I just talk about? Can I just talk about internal parity? Because actually, it's something we never talk about enough as a community. We normally talk about like OBR are strong versus X are strong.
Right.
It's normally the external. These are good. These are bad. The internal parity is super important to me. Super important to talk about, and super important to try to help Games Workshop push themselves to be better designers for that, which is why, again, I think the OC book is actually an amazing book, for loads of reasons. The Gothazar is very, very different to the Catapult, and the Mortek are super different to the Stalkers. Nagash is an incredibly different piece. Like, the book changes dynamically based on the units inside of it, which I think is awesome. So it's got a great parity and also diversity, which I think is really cool, and especially with the newer range, right? They created diversity, so that's great. Whereas we don't talk about internal parity very much, because the biggest lie told in wargaming is this: what would you like to take? And someone says, take what's cool, and that's bullshit, because you don't know what's cool. Especially if you do, you don't know what's cool. And also, you don't know what's cool to you. You don't know if painting yet is cool to you. You don't know if fighting is, or shooting, or being evasive, or casting a fucking spell. You have no idea what's cool to you. But most importantly, that thing that looks like it should do the thing, Thunder Tusk, does not do a fucking thing. You're like, sweet, what's that do? I think that's cool because it looks cool and it's shit, right? And it's really important, that internal parity, because you go, this sucks. It needs love. It's not like it sucks, throw it away. It sucks, love it. Like, give it something, make it better. And we never do that. We never do that.
Well, I mean, that's a lie you're told early on getting into the game. Like, I mean, that really is like, play what's cool. And I do think that you kind of like say, give it some love. I do think, like, the average player, you kind of collect an army, you might go to a tournament or two a year. Like, that average player, they're kind of slow rolling their army. You're gonna want to love your army. You're probably gonna be in it for the long haul, or you're just like a collector, and it's a different space for the game. But if you intend to play your army, I do think, like, loving your army. But that's a little bit of a different take. I'm just kind of clarifying here. I think that's a little bit of a different take from like play what's cool. Like play what you love,
Yeah.
but like as you're getting into the game, it can be a lot harder to identify these role players, like Black Knights, right? Like I loved Black Knights early on. I got in right around the time of like original KO Clown Car.
Hmm.
LON wasn't out yet. I just playing mixed, wrapping my mind around early on the idea of a Grand Alliance army was like it shorted my brain out in those original days. But I took Black Knights because I looked at them and I'm like, I need something that can go and hit that thing over there and fight it while I move the rest of my army. And like, so I had this time, and so like the hill I died upon were how great Black Knights were. Lo and behold, like Flesh Eater courts like come rolling around, and like I'm like 20 Black Knights solves this problem because it'll kill all but 5 of them. But if they're fully buffed enough, with a Lord of Bones buff, with a vampire, with a Van Hell's Dance Macabre, the 5 off the charge that live might kill the Flesh Eater Quartz Dragon. Like, that was like my problem.
Maybe.
So, yeah. So I solved that problem. No, they beat up. But what you're saying about internal parity, and I think you had like a kind of interesting take where you're going with KO is so KO everything shoots.
Mm.
But KO also has kind of this like the sort of like they have like so like everything shoots, boom, they all do that roll. But now they have like sort of a sub role. Like for instance, like Arco Company, they shoot, but then they stand on the objective when they shoot versus go out and fight you. And then you've got the guys like your Thunderers and stuff that or your Riggers that shoot, but then they also fight you. You know, like so you have these like modified roles and stuff. But now you're getting into like deep tiers of nuance to game theory and game design. I don't know.
Yeah, you do. But then the riggers do a better job all day than the wardens, and the wardens should be the fighty mobile ones. Yeah, and the riggers should be the shooty mobile ones. And unfortunately, the riggers just better in both roles. Yeah. So you get this kind of odd mixture, and some people like think that internal parity isn't a big deal, but like I feel like it really, really is because the crowd that want, and I'm not saying it's a crowd, but the idea that play what's cool or play what you love is viable is unfair because you're asking someone to play the terrible thing sometimes. You're like, I like the thing, and it's like it sucks, and they're like, but you tell like, and then the advocation for, but you love that, so play it, and it's like, but I hate losing all the time, not because of my investment in skill. What if that guy plays his heart out? Right. It doesn't matter. It's not as good as the other thing. Well, there's no like because that I feel isn't good for encouraging that. And I think the great thing about this is you can go, I'm going to collect the thing I like. We should all be allowed to collect the thing we like, right. Not forced to collect the thing that's good.
The way I often use my terminology is you should never feel like an idiot for playing the thing, right? Like when you're like, I love Black Knights, I should never feel like an idiot because Grimghast Reapers just came out and like they're relatively fast, 9-inch. Suddenly they're flying, which seems a lot faster than 12 inches not flying, right? They're cheaper, they're bigger, they've got the rend. Like now suddenly I'm looking at this unit and now I start to feel like an idiot for running Black Knights. I mean I didn't, but no. I think, I mean it's difficult because you're talking from like I think a different gear from how other people interact with the game, which is certainly like a competitive sense. Even on Vince's show last night, he's like, I'll play Slanesh, it's fine, I love the army, fine, you know, I'll job for like a year again because the wheel keeps turning. I think that there's a threshold for that mentality because it feels crappy to lose. I remember the hopelessness I felt when LON got over nerfed coming into that Flesh Eater. You know, the 12 battle tomes are about to come out, right? That GHB, right?
Yep.
We're about to get 12 battle tomes, and they go in and overcost GGR, which didn't just hurt LON, it splash hated on Nighthaunt for no reason. Nighthaunt did nothing wrong. And then they go in and they just up the points. Dogs, Nagash, Necromancer. Just like all the points go up. Like so now your army is just either you're running Vampire Lords on zombie dragons with ethereal amulets, or you're just jobbing for like a whole calendar year. That didn't feel good for me. I do have a competitive lean. I do have a competitive streak. I love my army. I have a whole brand dedicated to how much I love death armies and Nagash and shit. But it's still, I had this great dissonance personally of like, I'm playing my ass off, and dude with Flesh Eater Courts just like who just borrowed his friend's army, got into Warhammer last month, and this is his first tournament. Like, I outplay you on the table perfectly, get the charge, I'm like, oh no, it's dead. Like, okay, well, I don't engage, and I hoard objectives, and I set up speed bumps, and I'm like, oh, you fly to my, like, up my anus, and just explode my whole back line, and, like, just take the objectives top of two. And I'm like, literally, at some point, and this is a delicate balance, when I'm teaching people to hashtag get good, because I do often have the first, like, it's like, so I do have kids, and like when my kids mess up, and like the first thing I do is I ask them when they walk up, like, did you do good? Like, did you try to do the thing, right?
Yep.
Or was it just you know, like, things screwed up? So I have this similar mentality when someone's like, I had no chance at winning this game, and I'm like, did you try to win the game? Like, that's my first threshold. And this is often perceived as me asking people, did you try to get good? Like, perhaps the first thing you should do is try to get good at the game of Age of Sigmar, and then... So, I'm a bit of an asshole for having this mentality. But, you know, Slaanesh, when Slaanesh was his most pushed, I had a 50-50 win rate with my Beast of Chaos. Because I just played the game the wrong way. And by the wrong way, I don't mean breaking rules. I mean, I never fought. I just said, here's just outside of 3 inches. You're either going to charge or you're going to go around. You're going to charge her, and just lined up the table like that and said, you're either going to charge or you go around. And when they didn't have Thermal Rider Cloak, it worked. I just waste. It's going to take. You can do infinity damage, but you can still only fight that thing this turn. And if I checked out of the game, this thing's OP. I have no chance of ever winning. Then I never learn that lesson. I never learn about speed bumping. I never learn about these techniques that I now employ in my greater gameplay going forward. It's okay to feel uncomfortable with as the game changes. What happens? Yes. Like, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It is okay to play what you love, but you should never feel like an idiot, and you should never feel like after you've passed that first threshold, did you try to get good? You know, after you pass that first threshold, then we start looking at parity. Then we start. So I think that's a valuable caveat to what you're saying. Is that, like, is it really a problem, or, you know, and our tools for identifying what are problems, like the first metric, LLV stats, right? Look at the win rate. Is it a problem? You know, like, you know, and this is separate from the NPE debate, but
it is. Absolutely.
Anus flight. Thank you, Jared, for hashtagging that. Now we got a hashtag.
Hey, chat. By the way, I can't see the chat, which is a nice blessing today. Just taking a rest from you jerks.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, they're just popping off on you.
That's fine.
I think Tristan, like every other line, he's talking about how you're a Tory. I don't know what that means. I'm from a different country.
It's okay. Vince came on the show. Vince came on the show the other day with an incredibly weak argument, but decided to use an emotional jab and laden me with the burden of 200 years of austerity and malpractice in government to burden my argument against him. It was smart, but rude, and I told him so. I was like, "How dare you, sir?" It's okay. I flipped it though, so it's all good.
No, the social. Why do you want to destroy the social net of realm artifacts? It was a great take. No, the last two episodes, you had Vince on your show twice in the last couple months. Those were two of my favorite episodes of Warhammer, Honest Wargamer, in a long time. And then having you and Haywo in the same chat with Vince and Tom. And Tom actually was a little. I think he was a little bit quiet, and Haywo tends to just take over a room. He's got that huge personality. That was fantastic too. Just what I saw yesterday was I saw 4 people who have varying opinions about the game, and I grew in an appreciation of you and everyone in Warhammer Weekly. I'm like, no one person has this all 100% figured out, which is the importance of chatting and talking, and you bring on extra guests to help you refine your opinion or change it. I mean, this is important stuff. Just like, you know,
it's the entire crux of the show that I do. Like we have all of our guests have different opinions. Me and Nathan very different all the time, and we all get on and we have a conversation about it. And I think that and I always prefix that when I have someone on the show or we talk. I'm like, you just say what you think. I'm never going to beat you up for it. Like, we're going to talk it through. Yeah, and if I don't agree with you, I'll tell you. But it means that I respect you enough to tell you, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
And it's so valuable. And I've had amazing conversations where I've learned loads from all of my co-hosts who are regular, and then just regular guests. Like, it's just it's a much better way of living your life.
Yeah.
Like, listening to someone else's opinion,
yeah,
and then absorbing it, processing it, and then being like, I agree, I don't agree, this is very interesting, or whatever it might be. It's a great way to live. It's a great way to live. Everyone should try it.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
Live with a healthy dose of Cartesian doubt. I say is the notion that I might be wrong, so that you're willing to like listen to somebody rather than listen for them to stop talking and then like interject.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very like good way to live your life. Is like, and also to discover that like you can disagree with somebody and still respect them. I mean, that's you're nobody 100% aligns with you. I think death is the best faction in the world. There is nothing you can say to change my opinion. I love all the armies up and down. Like, I love the death faction up and down. Even when Flesh Eater Courts got like super OP, there was 1 week there where I was just like, yes, awesome. They were jobbers for just like ever. They were one of the only armies with a real battle tome for how long, and they sucked so bad. Awesome, they're great. And then I'm like, oh no, not like this, no. And then like the car goes over the cliff.
One day it'll be destruction. Come on, destruction.
Oh, the year of destruction's
you'll
coming.
have your day.
Yeah, it's coming, right? With the Giants, it's going to be the year of destruction as soon as the Giants show up.
Yeah.
No, no.
Well, I mean, they have an inherent problem, right? They don't have
Elite.
body. I imagine that they'll have something where they score objectives like. Oh, we already know that they can kick objectives, right? That's already a cast iron. That's a cast iron rumor that we know, so that's fun.
Yeah,
I
like that design.
Yeah, fun.
It's quirky. It's weird. See, what I like when we saw Large and in Charge or Might, I can't remember. We wanted to call it Large and in Charge, and they called it Might Makes Right, but it's okay. We still won. Haywo and I. When they did that, I said, "Oh look, Games Workshop is identifying that Elite is a downside, and they're playing with Elite in different ways." Right, so like we got the Large and in Charge, extra models, Might Makes Right, they score as extra models. Now we're seeing Giants moving objectives, and that's going to change the dynamic of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if they have an allegiance ability that says one Giant just has an objective regardless. You can just go, this is my objective now. Like something like that where they just like, they have it. You either have to kill it or ignore it and play the rest of the table. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they have something like that. Like it's called It's Mines now. It's the Michael the Michael Che joke about gentrification. Just like
I really like Michael Che. He's great.
Like it's mines now. If you want to take over, like you want to take over objective, just send white women in like to a coffee shop and they'll just like take
all day long. All day long.
Yeah. No, so like I wouldn't be surprised if they have like it's mines now, like to go along with their kicking objectives, because like it's showing that they're like, hey, we know Elite is a downside, you know. It's why I'm ultimately kind of okay with Techless. Maybe not Technado, but like Techless as he exists. I like the design space of going, it's 660 points. Like, he's a spell dom in a different way from, like, say, Croak, who's just, quite frankly, undercosted. A Nagash, who is essentially, like, the brute force spellcaster. I'm going to try to cast 8 spells a turn. You get 4, but they're more, you know, you are consistent because you're a tactical genius. You know, you are the Archmage. Whereas Nagash is, like, filled with hubris and, like, strong will and so on. Like, cool. This is a nice little design space to see these spell doms go in different directions. The numbers could be wrong, but then you just fix the numbers. Like, I'm not.
I have got zero problem with Techless other than his spell.
Yeah.
Other than the one, and I know he's got 2. Sorry, specifically his damage spell is
D3
just
mortal
really
essentially table wide is what's about to happen.
Yeah, it's incredibly ill thought out and makes no sense. And like because the rest of the book has some genuinely very good interaction, which I really like, and has been well considered and thought through to some strong degrees. I just don't know how it goes through. I know it goes through incredibly poor quality control, but other than that, I'm genuinely excited for the elves, and they look awesome. They look so.
Wait,
good.
are you pro Beefer of Secret or anti Beefer of Secrets?
The
world
big,
must know.
when I first saw them, I couldn't stop laughing. but like I'm into them now.
Yeah,
I'm into
yeah,
them in a
yeah.
big way. Yeah, they're pretty rad, right?
Yeah,
Like they remind me of like World of Warcraft orc shamans with the big shoulder pads.
Yes, yeah, yeah. The orc shaman armor, the tier. Well, they became the trope that they always had like weird like volcanic shoulder pads. Was like yeah.
And it looks, and some people are going to do some really cool stuff with that, like stuff exploding out of it, all sorts. So yeah, I'm into them. I'm into them in a big way.
Yeah.
Big hat guys, still obviously ridiculous.
Yeah, just snip the tip, give it a circumcision, and like put it on the shoulder pads. You'll be fine.
That works.
No,
that works.
I don't know. Like, I think it's important to like talk about this stuff, identify this stuff, because now we're in that list building stuff. So now again, meaningful choice for me begins at list building. I go, okay, Techless is going to tech NATO the table. I mean, now there's even some pushback. People are throwing around Techless could be a trap. We've seen some stuff in TTS where like sometimes they're moving away from him to like because you get to buy like some extra battle cattle. So like this is we're in this like really cool. We know we know which wind we know which way the wind's blowing, but like you don't 100% have the precipitation amount yet. So I think that's it's interesting because now.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the most honed and well skilled list doesn't include tech lists and the portal. Like it doesn't matter that isn't up here, because what happens is Jimmy and Pete and Frank, who don't overly care about that, but they know, and because they've read, I could just do this thing, and then they just do it 5 out of 5 times in the mid tables, and all of those guys are just having a sucky time because guess what? They're also the people who aren't teching their Gits list or Beast of Chaos list, or it doesn't matter what list. They're not taking their list for that finite 5-5 win list anyway, and they also probably don't have the table acumen. So when you talk about the game at the top flight, which is super interesting because it can just be 3 armies in an incredibly interesting metagame. One of my favorite games to commentate ever are mirror matches. They're fascinating.
Yeah,
they're fascinating because you've got the same tool. Yeah, because you've got the same tools. Like both 40k and Age of Sigmar, I've covered both in mirror matches, and they are so interesting because you've got the same tool sets oftentimes, especially with Age of Sigmar in some ways. Because normally allegiance abilities are the same. Sometimes they interact together, and you get some really fun stuff. Like obviously, old Double Sylvaneth was really funny. So mirror matches are really hot. So when you get into that top echelon of players actually making plays to win games. But when you're in the mid tables and someone tech NATOs, no one cares apart from the guy who's it's like I've lost 2 games, I'm still going to tech NATO you. It's like, why be so oppressive? And it's not the player. It's not the player. It's not the player. It's definitely the army. That's all. Like it doesn't matter if it's not the best version of something. It'll be something someone does. Like if you actually look at when Skaven were like rocking it right at the start with the Rat Trap, like their win rate was good, but there were a lot of people playing it. So for everyone that was going 5-0, there was like a whole bunch of people 3-2 in, and just turn 1 just being like, listen, this is the lightning vortex. Get ready, son. Yeah, and everyone in the mid table like, dude, it's a Sunday. I'm hungover. This sucks.
Yeah.
Stop doing this. Like, and it's interesting at that top flight. It really is. But stuff like that that's so easy to do and so easy to produce shouldn't be a part of the game.
Well,
like it shouldn't be a part.
What you're talking about with like Skaven is like I think the reason we had some sort of polarized stats with Skaven is because you had 2 types of players. One's jumping in on the army to play it competitively, and then you had people just grab the models off their shelves, throw in a spell vortex, and be like, I can win now. Like you had that sort of thing. This brings me to something you're kind of talking about, like the top table play is very interesting in and of itself. Do you think there's some like value in having like elite stats? Like,
so do you mean like ELO? So what do you mean by top like elite?
Yeah,
stats?
Elite stats, as in like okay, like we take like the top tables and we, by all means, more information always better. So continue with what you're doing now. LOV is just a nice good aggregate, but then like you go okay, like we're gonna take only the armies performing at this top level, or throw out low scores, some sort of like pruning the stats to be like, well, this is what do the stats look like at the top tables versus the aggregate, because so many people play this game for different reasons. Like I show up, I'm pretty beer and pretzels these days. I used to be. It took me a while to unlearn my Magic the Gathering dickishness. I think I've changed for the better, but it took me a while to get that out of my head. That like I don't need to be like that anymore. Uh, Whatever. So like I lean a little bit more heavy into the beer and pretzels these days. Not gonna lie. No, but meth is the devil. Thank you. Thank you, Tristan. Um, do you think that, yeah, so like more elite stats, like, well, what is, like OBR is going to struggle on the top tables. It's going to run into all of its natural predators every time, but it's going to crush, beer and pretzel guy there for, with their Beast of Chaos army, right? Like, it's just going to destroy them. Like, do you think there's some value in like knowing, how do these matchups break down in the mirror match sense at the top tables or anything like that? Just
I see. So, no, it's a great question, and it's actually so on the Super Series website. There's actually, and I don't think it's very apparent. There's a bunch of I think there are 5 points written out about some of the things we intend to do. So something has been taken off there, and I will send you the original version of that. But effectively.
I'm sorry, I got to contemplative Rob here with the fist in his face.
pensive Rob, yeah.
Yeah, this is great. No, this is good. Kudos to whoever did your web design. I really like you.
Tom.
You got the Twitch and YouTube both up here at the top. If you're live, you're gonna have the live. This is good. I like this.
Anyway. There's loads more to come on that as well, which is really exciting. Because, like you said, it's not untrue that I've been working on this for a year and a half. I have been only doing this for a year and a half. Battletome reviews and everything else has been what I've been using to, I think I've committed enough to doing the Honest Wargamer stuff. Now carry on with doing the Super Series things.
Well, this is the big goal. This is the big plan. This has been an ambition you've had since even Warhammer TV, to get this big tSports. You're the godfather of tSports at this point. You're angling for that. You've been right.
I'm not angling for it, but yeah, someone's got to do the thing. I think
someone's got to do the thing. Yeah, someone's got to do the
But someone did suggest that I could be called the commish, and I am not. Going to pretend that I don't want that title. I don't want any of the responsibility with being called the commish.
Yeah.
But Godfather, no. But I don't mind the commish.
You got to work on your Vince. You got to work on your Vince McMahon walk then. If you don't walk, up
I don't want to be
like
Vince McMahon at all.
Oh yeah, he is kind of a piece of shit, isn't he?
He is a piece of shit. But anyway. But the thing on the site, which actually didn't end up, and this is to answer your question. Sorry.
No, we're good.
That didn't end up on there because Tom said that it was a bit negative. Was what I think I identified over the course of all of this time I've been doing what I've been doing is 5 problems that we have with this, the structural entity of wargaming. Because one of the things about wargaming, which we don't often talk about, is the fact that it exists in its very first state. This is what happened. Someone was like, let's all get together and play a tournament. And someone went, yeah. And then 30 years later, we're still doing that. It's like zero change. Yeah. And it's like, wait, are we going to do this week on week? And it's like, no. We'll all meet up at the same time in one place. Well, logistics of that's a bit of a nightmare. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because I don't want to commit this weekend and another weekend. No, instead, I want you to build 800 tables of terrain instead of 100 8 times. It's I'm so confused. So it's been the same. So I don't think wargaming has in any way been attacked from a structural standpoint for a long time. And on the website, there were a bunch of problems which we started to identify, or at least I identified. Now, I could be wrong, obviously, but things that I thought were holding back the community from taking the next step. Now, the next step doesn't mean the step that I envisage. What it does mean is a step that I think puts us all in a better place. Well, it puts the company in a better place. Really, really important.
Yep.
And it puts the game and the community in a better place. Ultimately, my goal.
You're going to do something. And someone's going to have that second idea and that third idea. They're going to remix your idea. Someone's going to be like, "Oh no, what Rob did, that's shit. I'm going to do it better." You're doing something else that forces a conversation, which is kind of if I retitled tonight's, it's just Rob and Andrew have a conversation. You're having a conversation with the community. You're going, "Look at this thing," right? And I think it's a good thing. I really do. I don't. I know we've come at odds when it comes to talking about OBR. The big thing for me was Ban Slash. When you said that, I was like, Like that was the one that bothered me. If we want to go back to where I first got triggered and like said some unkind stuff to you on the Twitters, it was there. I'm like, ban Slaanesh. I'm like that felt like it had a ton of hubris to it, and I'm like, because so many people do show up on that the table 2 and table 3 space, or in the mid table space. They don't give a crap about winning the tournament. I watched some guy give me a lesson on all the Slaanesh houses and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, cool, bro, and then like just kill him with Ungor Raiders. I'm like, great game. Like, he wasn't the problem. The army was a problem, but like, I'm not playing the army every time.
But let me tell you what the problem was.
Yeah.
The event is the problem.
Yeah. Okay.
All events are a problem. Yeah. Like, you want to hear some rants?
Yeah. Here's
all
your hot
events
take. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. All TOs are cowards. Yeah. And I consider all of them to be my friends. Like Clinto, Mark Wilson, you're amazing. Mark's actually one of the braver choices. Actually, one of the braver choosers. He changes stuff up a lot, like in a big way. He runs Blood Tithe. Yeah. He does a really good job. Like, because what they just want to do is put on an event, which is a great decision, and it's so fucking hard. So calling them cowards is obviously hyperbolic, rude, and I apologize.
Yeah, real dick move here. Real dick move here.
Yeah. Let me qualify why. Let me qualify why. It's because what they want to do is they want the big ticket name. They want the competitive player who we all know. Yeah. They want that guy and that guy, because then your event has prestige, right? Winning that event is a big deal. It's a prestigious move. It's got the prestige of having the big players. Also, I'm an event organizer, so I'm also calling myself a coward. Twitch chat, fuck you.
Yeah. Chaos Spawn here is just Americans love hating an Englishman, so carry on. Let's go.
Yeah. Don't worry about it, baby.
Yeah.
So hold on. So they want the big names, but they also want everyone to have fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think these two things are at odds?
I do think that they're at odds. Why would they not be at odds? We've had this conversation time and again, and we always, as a community, try to quantify it. Narrative gamer, competitive gamer, win at all cost gamer. It doesn't make any sense. There's a guy that plays 8 games a week because he loves playing. He loves the structural mechanics of the game. I tried to explain this to someone literally the other week, not on air, in my personal life, because we were talking about art, and I was like, you should see 2 people play Warhammer. It's art. Now, 2 people who play it for a hobby and they play once every 4 months, it is not art. It would be like me painting a model. It's atrocious. Yeah. But when 2 people play all the time and they understand the game and there's a give and take and the dice change the mechanics of what's happening, it's a beautiful thing to behold, and it's something that I deeply love. However, you can't expect the guy that practices 8 times a week and writes lists a day and plays several armies to kick the stuffing out of 3 people who it's their hobby. And you, number one, you should be ultimately totally allowed to play your hobby. You should be like, hello, this is my first event. I don't know anything. Yeah. And then the other guy goes, bro, let's get drunk and have a great time. Shake hands. That should be an event that's okay. But unfortunately, you also want to win Adepticon. Right? So you can't give that person that time. Right? You can't give that person that time because they are endangering you in everything that you need to achieve, that you've worked for X number of time. Now, the people in that bracket of people that take it that seriously are smaller than the people who would just turn up and having a great time, but they are both valid.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And events tell those 2 people that they should get on, and they can't possibly. They have utterly different purposes for being there. And so they should differentiate them. They should split that field up. And then the person who's just like a part-time hobbyist, like, oh, it's not fair. Like, give you a good stat from the LVO this year. Big shout out to the 40K Stat Center. So the top 100 performing ITC players at the LVO had, going into day 2, a 90% win rate. So, you're talking about a huge field, a massive field of 800 people or 600 or whatever it was. Yeah. But the 100 people had a 90% win rate. And why was that? It's because they either cannibalized themselves, yeah, or they just killed everyone around them, in the game. And why didn't they? It's because these guys play this game every day, all year. How can you expect to go to a tournament and have a nice time with those guys? I can't play tennis. I wouldn't go to Wimbledon and be like, let's go, boys. I'm ready. I'm ready. Did you see the guy about who's the lady tennis player?
There's a lot of like really talented women.
Oh yeah, but the two
like,
famous sisters.
Oh, Serena Williams, the Williams sisters.
Yeah. So there was like a Facebook poll. I'm in now. I'm completely on my thread. So there was not a Facebook poll or like a questionnaire. It was like it was something like 90 out of 100 men were like, we could receive a serve off Serena Williams, and so they just grabbed 90 of those men and took him to a court, and Serena Williams aced every single one of them. Not one of them returned the serve because she's a fucking professional at her job.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with events, and why I feel like events need to pick a point. They need to say, we're for this group or we're for this group.
Interesting.
And when you put them together, this is a huge problem. You have such a disparity that I have to talk about things differently, and it's confusing. And everyone else has a tough time. Stats don't make sense. This is
right. This is where the elite stats. Yeah, the elite stats. Right, like they're like. Yeah. I know for a fact, like Cities of Sigmar has oppressive builds that 90% of people can't beat with their armies. But I look at the stats because a lot of people are running that army. They just grab their iron breakers off the shelf. They threw in a phoenix for kicks. Like they went Grey Rotter fastness because they think tanks are cool. Like they just did, they souped together an army. They played what they loved, and that is a lot different from. I've got bridge. I've got every blaze master in my army. Like I've got the flamethrower battle mage just like up on the thing, crapping out D3 plus D3 plus D3 mortal wounds within 24 inches, whatever I choose. Like, a lot different. That army looks a lot different. And that player looks a lot different. I like
absolutely. Absolutely. It's an incredibly unfun build. A, to play. Yeah. Like, that guy's not having a great time. Yeah. And B, it's not, it's definitely not fun to play against. And that is a huge distinction. That was one of, on the Honest Wargamer website. So if you kind of read the blurb bits, you'll start to see that they're the answers that are on there, but not the problems. There are the answers and not the problems, and that is because the problems sound over the top sometimes. And Tom made a really good point. He's like, don't talk about them as these huge negatives because you don't want people to think that there are negatives, because there are.
They're going to go. You still don't want to, like, even if there are negatives, you're going to put people into fight, flight, freeze when you come negative. It's just what happens in our brains when we. There's another thing about going into a conversation going, I might be wrong. It's a big difference of going into a conversation to prove your point, because then you don't go into your primal lizard brain fight, flight, freeze. That's a reason why you wouldn't want the negative thing on the website, because what's going to happen? I see the negative thing. If it's a point I agree with, my cognitive bias is going to go, cool, awesome. If I'm a person who's undecided, I'm going to cross my arms and go, oh, really? Right? And if I'm a person with an opinion you're never going to sway me on, then I'm just going to disagree right out, right? Like, but it's that margin of people who are undecided are just going to like cross their arms and lean back and go, oh, really? And prove it. You have to prove to me now your skepticism, your cynicism. If I may push back a little bit, or not push back, clarifying questions. Why are TOs cowards, though? There's a great point about like why are TOs cowards, though? Like why?
Well, I already said that I was wrong.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're just clickbaiting people in a live conversation. Got it. Like, so people are gonna like highlight this clip later and be like, "Hey, Mr. Mephisto thinks that tournament organizers are all cowards," and then like it's just gonna be you talking, but like no one's gonna know the difference because they're just gonna see the like clip and they're just gonna like click past it. Like, oh yeah, that sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not. They are wonderful pillars of the community, and I love all of them. Like I do, and I think that they do a service that we all should value very heavily. However, they serve a value to everyone, and they try and make everyone happy. Now, the other job that I've had for a long time has been a nightclub promoter, and if I can give you an anecdotal story, so I've always run rock nights, and my other big night that I always did was
before we move too far onto the nightclub point. Real quick, I do think one major flaw in your assertion is I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I don't think that the player I am, I'm capable of changing gears and having fun. I walk up to the table and I see someone's bringing in their like tuned list. I know they're there to win it. I give them that chess, highly locked in, super tuned game. I don't drink beer. I play. I play to win. And blah blah blah. I see someone walk up with like all the Timmy picks. I go, okay, this is the type of game that is. I'll buy you a beer real quick. Like I have that possibility. I think a lot of people in the community actually can change gears. I think people have that capacity.
But not everyone, right?
Not everyone, and I get where you're going. I don't know that it has to be derisive though, or divisive. I don't know that it has to be.
I don't see divisive is absolutely the wrong thing to think about. Like I'm going to a wedding, someone's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "The vegetarian option, because I'm vegetarian." Like, cool. It's an option. Like what you're doing is you're catering to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's understanding your audience. That's what the nightclub thing was about to be about. You understand. Yeah, you understand that you have an audience. Yeah, and instead of asking you to do the job for me, I, as the organizer, should be creating an environment for you, the person who wants to attend. I want you to have the best experience possible. That's what nightclubs are always about. I want you to have the best time possible, and therefore you'll come back and repeat customers. Quite important.
So all I'm hearing is narrative events are way better because they know that people are coming to play a narrative tournament.
Yes, they are specific, and that is the difference between tournaments and events, and there should be the distinction.
Yeah.
A tournament is, by definition, a tournament. Yeah, you are there to win is the purpose of a tournament. There is no other tournament I can ever imagine where you're there to just have a laugh. Yeah, but events, you're definitely there to have a laugh. Like you might go to a tournament thinking, never in my wildest dreams do I think I'm going to win. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you're going with the mindset to win. A lot of people turn up to tournaments. Now, I don't know what the percentages are. I would always just be arbitrarily picking one. Yeah. But some people turn up to an event and they just want to have a laugh. Those people should 100% be allowed to do that. I want them to have a vehicle for that. I want event organizers to understand they're actually putting on an event. That's one of the really great things about Bobo. Yeah. So John Green knows that it's a big event and people want to win the event, right? Yeah,
an Englishman and a vegetarian. You're just giving everybody all the reasons to hate you, according to Chat Gang.
If it helps you, I'm also straight edge.
See, now I've got all the opinions on straight edge. Like, if you can like come down from your mountain long enough, like if you can stop turning water into your undue sense of superiority for just 1 second. Like smug sense of superiority. No,
it's okay. I bet I've got more people. I bet I've got more people drunk in my life than you ever have. By like factors. By factors.
I live in Wisconsin, dude. Like it's
dude,
like.
I used to do 2,000 people through a club a night.
Okay.
A night.
Okay.
Like 15,000 people a week. Right. Like that's a lot of drunk people.
Yeah.
But Wisconsin also.
Yeah, I mean it's like we're just. It's like the same thing. It's just a party here all the time. There's a reason the Lewis Black comedy bit is like Wisconsin, and my hat's off to you. You are not alcoholics. You are professionals.
Yeah, perfect.
But I mean that we'll continue with your nightclub point because I think this is going someplace great. But that's another aspect of is like right now, and I think this could work towards a point I think you're getting towards. Right now, you don't have a professional Warhammer gamer. Yes, guy who plays 8 games a week is taking it more seriously and in a different light, but they don't have a sponsorship on their back. I've seen the take about like why the NFL is more fun to watch than Pee Wee and so on and so forth. And I'm like, but they're not professionals right now in Age of Sigmar.
Well, not in Age of Sigmar, but there is in 40K.
Okay, fair enough. But in Age of Sigmar, it's not there yet. That could become a reality. I think it's going to be eventually. It just as things get big enough, that stuff just happens. But right now, to say the person who practices eight times a week is a professional, they're certainly more competitive. They're certainly playing the game a different way, but they're not Serena Williams yet. Like
no, and I agree with that. Now this is the great. It's a great point. Like, and it's really valuable. And also, and I'd like to clarify again as a statement of my intent. Is that those people who practice 8 times a week are in no way superior to the people who want to do things for a hobby, who don't have the time to commit, even if they wanted to practice 8 times a week. Maybe they don't have the money, maybe they don't have the drive, maybe they just don't want to, and it's only something they half do. All of those people are as valuable as the people that play 8 times a week. However, However, because my thing is talking about the game, those people are more invested. Not more invested. That's not true. Those people are more involved with the game because they just play it more. So they have more of a nuance and an experience with it. So that's a different kind of thing. Like, if there's a guy who half knows a book and the guy that's played it 50 times, I'm going to talk to the guy who's played it 50 times. He'll have better insights, probably. Yeah. Now that might not be true. The guy that half read it might be a genius who could just read it and know. Yeah.
Or they could just be a way cooler guy than the person who wasted their time reading.
Yeah, that's also true. That's also true. It doesn't just because you play 8 times doesn't mean you're in any. Like, it doesn't you're not funny. You're not clever. Like, it's just based on a skill set. That's it. Yep. Same as tennis, right? Like, you've got Serena Williams, who's a badass, and then we had an English fella. I can't remember his name at this point, but he was like watered milk. He was just basically the most boring thing you've ever seen. I can't remember what his name was. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I seem like I know more about tennis than I actually do. I'd like to point out.
See, Andy Murray. No, I'm trying to like stick with the tennis takes. I'm like, but I know so very little, so I just have to pretend I'm an authority and let you know.
I can't. I also can't do
it. like he said Wimbledon. I'm like, that might be a place, that might be a tournament. It could be both. I don't know. Like, it's not.
Wimbledon's like the prestigious.
It's the posh,
tennis
like
event.
Yeah.
It's the one. Anyway, so where I'm going with this is that you can't have professional Age of Sigmar players specifically without an environment for them to exist inside of, and then you need a vehicle for that. This was the crux of initially thinking about the Super Series, like way back in the day. Like, it was like, what we need to do is create a space, and it's because of my experiences with people like Darren. If you could pay Darren to play Warhammer all day, he'd play Warhammer all day. Yeah, and you would love to watch Darren play Warhammer all day. He's funny, he's articulate, he's incredibly kind, he's interesting, and
Watson?
Watson.
I've had some great conversations with him. He like we DM from time to time. Seems like as far as being as close to a stranger as you can be, he's super nice. He's asked me about he's reached out to me personally on personal matters. It seems like a great guy. I would love to have a game with that man sometime. He seems amazing on your show every time.
He's a great person, but he's also excellent at playing Warhammer, right? And that's really important, right? And
did you have to mail him a box of tissues when Aether Quartz brooch was like removed from the game?
No.
Could you bring him a box of tissues for me? Like this are from Matt.
He's also a vegetarian, FYI.
No, I take back all the nice things I was about to say about him. No. Seems like a great guy. Anyway, continue.
So there needs to be an environment for these people to have a vehicle to start to be able to be professional wargamers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you either quit everything and be like, I hope there's a professional circuit available for me. Yeah. Which there is not. Yeah. Or you create the vehicle, and the Super Series is the vehicle for. So the most important part about the Super Series is discovering what is the most watchable version, of Warhammer, and what is the most interactive version of Warhammer. Because we already know what the most interactive version of playing Warhammer is. It's just playing with your mates. That's already the best version. Yep. It's done. That's not a problem, and it's my favorite thing to do. I imagine everyone in the Twitch chat and yourself, it's one of your favorite things to do as well.
No, I actually hate it. Like, I just sit at the table with my arms crossed and frowning the whole time. I'm like, I'd rather be talking about Warhammer right now.
So, but the thing about that is that we can't all play Warhammer all the time, and also most importantly, explaining that out to an audience is a valuable skill set that I've been trying to develop for years. I still think I've got loads and loads of room to grow and develop, so I don't think I'm in any way perfect. And I'm absolutely always open to constructive feedback. Always.
If you want, speaking of I was hoping we'd talk about shoutcasting as its own kind of thing, because best coverage in the world isn't a lie when you talk about Honest Wargamer streams and your coverage and stuff like that. You guys do a phenomenal job. Scrivo in when you guys were in Tennessee and stuff like that, fantastic job. And that was me witnessing it directly because I was physically at that event. And then of course by many accounts, the CanCon, stellar, great coverage. Watch some Street Fighter tournaments if you haven't. Listen to their coverage, learn from them. It's the best shoutcasters in anything. We're talking baseball's got a very even tone. It's pretty good. But like, watch some Capcom Cup, man. Like, I was in the I made physical cash money, shoutcasting like League of Legends for a little while there. Some shooters and some fighters. When you listen to the challenge in shoutcasting, when you're shoutcasting, by the way, if you're not familiar, just broadcasting a game. It's called shoutcasting when we move it on to like the esports spectrum.
In America.
Right. Sure, it could be called whatever. I don't know what it is over there. You guys have
commentating.
Commentary, yeah. So like, it comes in a bunch of different forms. Baseball is usually a single person, like really even keel because they're supposed to be for radio. Football is, you've got your color commentary, you've got your play-by-play. So color is the funny one, play-by-play is the telling you what technically is happening. Wrestling is a whole nother thing. It's broadcasting and telling you the thing that you're watching is an art form. It's a whole different game. And some of the best in the business are Street Fighter because the greatest challenge is getting across, not just to the people who love Warhammer, but the casuals who like Warhammer, but they have no idea like the nuance of it. Teaching them how to watch your thing is the hardest challenge. When saying footsies in Street Fighter. He's got a great footsies game. You don't know what that is, but as you're watching and you see them kicking at the ground, you go, oh, that's what footsies is. Teaching people how to watch your game and giving them a lexicon as they're watching is one of the biggest struggles with broadcast, with shoutcasting.
So I'm glad you brought that up because the very first time that I got back in the seat, because it took over a year for people to convince me to get back into doing it, having left Games Workshop. And the first time when we were back at Bobo and I walked away from that, and the difference between doing it for Games Workshop where no one gave a fuck and doing it with my mates and everyone gave a fuck was night and day. And then leaving that world, leaving that Bobo, that very first one, and sitting down, I was like, okay, we're going to do this properly. But doing that properly was so much more involved because the first thing I had to do was go away. Because when I was at Games Workshop, I never had any training or any help or anything. So the first thing I did was I went away and I read loads of stuff and I watched loads of stuff. And the very first thing, and I'm really glad you brought this up, the very first thing I hit on was like, we don't have a language for talking about things. So the very first thing I did was I wrote the workbook because then I wrote the workbook and I created a bunch of keywords that are on the website. So now we have a language to understand what's going on. And that is good. So we have that. Whenever I'm talking to the commentators or I'm having someone commentate, I'm like, please just familiarize yourself with all these terms. Right. I do have some more in that now. So I always have a document I send out to people. And then I start to try and, because the other thing I would love to do is obviously get more commentators and have them, because I don't think my voice is the best voice for it. I just think I'm the most practiced. Like when Vince came and did CanCon, he did amazing. Gemma also the
Gemma
same.
Was fantastic.
Benjamin and Darren, when they've come and do it, like there's been so many really talented people who've come and, like Tom, who does the 40K stuff with us, is like a legend. Nick, so there's been great people who've done great commentary, and I'd like to encourage more people to do that. But we do have to understand, someone has to be in the job of show producing, right? Someone has to be like, we need a language, guys. Here's the language. Someone like, actually, I'd like to add to that. But like, cool, what would you like to add? I'm super approachable. Might not see me, but I am super approachable to all those things being included.
I met you at not Gen Con, Adapticon. Briefly, you played against Haywo. I played against Nathan. I played against Nathan, his gits, and it's like, you are a absolute darling. You just call TOs cowards sometimes. So like. You're a conundrum to me, man. Sometimes, I swear.
It's because ultimately one day me and Nathan will just be old men playing narrative Warhammer. There'll be a huge competitive scene with like tournaments and tours.
Yep.
And I'll be like, Nath, do you want to go watch? You'll be like, fuck, do I? He's the best.
Yeah, no, he's a great dude too. I tried. The only reason you're on is because I couldn't get him. He's got like a family and stuff.
Yeah, well, listen, it's fine. Nathan Prescott's sidekick is actually the other title of the Honest Wargamer. Yeah. So
back to broadcast.
So you made a really good point, and thank you for doing so. And it was obviously we need a language, so I started to develop that, and that might seem incredibly egotistical, but that wasn't the point. It was for me. I needed to understand how I could do a better job as a commentator. I needed to understand the flow of a game, because that was the other problem as well. I was like, so I broke a game up. I was like, when we do the coverage, how do I go through the coverage? And then I was like, how do I explain the flow of a game? How do I explain tempo? Like, how do I analyze that? And that really is there's a bit inside, like, I think it's chapter 4 in the workbook, which I'm most proud of, but pretty much everyone just reads the first chapter and never reads the rest. Like, and they say things
I downloaded it, never read it, but lie about having read it. That's been my lie my whole life. So
perfection.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But chapter 4, you skip it all, but you can go to chapter 4, and actually that's what you talk about, which is a term I just stole directly from a really great article about the beatdown in Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
Like, which I know you. So you understand that terminology, and I just, because it's good. I don't need to reinvent something, right? Like, it already exists.
Exactly. Borrow from, like, everyone knows what gravity is, right? Like, it's ubiquitous. So if you have, like, a term in the game, you can just be like, oh yeah, there's gravity. Like, you borrow from the common parlance of sports that are well known. If there's soccer stuff, like the pitch. I think most people know what the pitch is. Like, not that we need one for a battlefield, but we might. Like, getting more people to watch. You're borrowing common parlance, the beatdown. And furthermore, you don't need to play Magic the Gathering. When I say the words beatdown, like, you kind of have a good idea. Like, this is a very good terminology. This is good shoutcasting. This is great broadcast. Having language that I've face it, most people don't actually play World of Warhammer, or most people don't actually play Warhammer. They read about Warhammer and they go complain on Facebook and, like, sometimes the TGA, and, like, they have, like, some models and stuff like that, but they don't play 8 times a week. That's going to be the bulk of your audience. It's not the 8 times a week. They're playing your games at your events, right? So it's the audience is they've got it. They're at a more casual clip, and casual isn't a bad thing. It's okay to, like, enjoy something purely and casually. Everybody, it's fine. Like, you're not don't feel insecure about it. But you do have to have this terminology that is quote unquote casual friendly. And part of it is teaching your casuals how to go. One of the greatest things League of Legends ever did is GP10, gold per 10. Or gold at 10 minutes. So, like, what it is like, they invented an entire thing to give a fuck about. Is how much gold has this character generated by 10 minutes, and what's the average gold you should expect? Oh, like, you don't need to know the nuance of generating gold. I just go, oh my god, they're 2k gold, like, over the average of GP10. And you go, oh, they have more than the normal gold that somebody has at 10 minutes. And you go, oh, I should care about this. Teaching people how to watch your game via the language you invent, the language you borrow, and the language you use is super. I mean, that's half the battle of broadcast for me. The other half is, like, having good, like, physical, like production. But
I mean, that helps a ton. No, so and that's been the process for the past year and a half. So actually, if you actually went through and watched all of the coverage that we've done in the past year and a half, you would actually understand that I've actually just been using the coverage, which has been nice, right? Like, people are like, you're doing really great coverage. I'm like, sweet, this is actually just my R&D department. Like, which has been nice. So it's helped me develop and work on and see what problems there are. And there are other problems as well. There are other problems, and I'm glad that I'm able to talk to you about it here, that they are problems, and that I'm hoping we're coming up with solutions. Our solution, for those TOs, is to just create a format that only someone who would be fairly dedicated would want to be a part of.
And this is
however, there is that creates its own cyclical problem, that maybe you just get only this very select group of nepotistic tryhards. So we haven't announced this yet, but we already have a vehicle for people who are new and they want to practice together and they want to try hard and want to form their own teams, that they can do so, and then they can enter via that process to challenge for the title. Because of course you want new people to always be gunning. You want everyone at the top to be threatened consistently. You want the new young guns coming in, whether or not they be old fellas or just a new group. You want them in, you want them threatening, you want them challenging,
this is
because you want
the draft in the NFL, right? Like the draft in the NFL or any major sport, it's super exciting because what is it? It's an influx of new talent. Even if some of that talent never pans out, you just go, the prospect of it keeps the veterans on their heels and gives the fans stuff to be excited about. League of Legends recruits essentially from their challenger pool. People who have climbed the regular ladder, you and I can play. We both, you know what? I got it. We're both going to quit Warhammer and we're just going to become LOL grinders, right? So for research, and then you and I, we're going to tag team. We're going to duo, climb the ladder, become challengers. The challenger pool is how the teams scout and recruit the new players for League of Legends. They have the slider. You're essentially doing that with a game that's, I mean, it's less digital, right? Like our game's not very digitized. The beauty of our game is that we play physically in person in a world that is becoming more digitized. That's beautiful. But we can use technology for greater good. Make it approachable, widen the audience, make it not prohibitive, because I think that's the great fear that in some of the pushback you're receiving to this. If first off, change is scary to anybody. Oops, get over it. And second off is your people are worried that nepotism angle, that it's going to be prohibitive. It's just going to be a different type of like a best friend zone, and then nobody else is allowed into this interesting new form of play.
Yeah, but I already seeing that, because that's actually something I've been very critical of time and time again. And it is also, again, one of the points of the process, because you end up with a champion, which is cool as you go through the Super Series, and you'll end up with an English champion, which is fun. And then an Irish champion, and a Scottish champion, and a Swedish champion. So then those guys get to play. But the important part is they earn their place in that role. And currently in Warhammer, we also have a problem with how people earn places in things. And so this is a nice open and transparent vehicle for people to earn a place. And I think I think that that's also really valuable as well. People can understand, they can see the journey, they understand it, and they know what's happening. That's all really valuable elements to me.
Right. Transparency and accountability, quote unquote accountability, right? Like these are the two things you want. People, if they understand the process, they're not going to be as upset with it. If they think they have a shot at being a part of the process, they're going to be more receptive to it. Like, you're combating some of these things. We don't want to trade one old boys club for a different old boys club. Like, that would be a worst case scenario. Like, it would be. You're like, oh, it's the Simpsons thing, like the No Homers club. Like we had the awesome club over here, and like he ruined that club. We're just going to go form the No Homers club over here.
Like, yeah, exactly. Because ultimately, I don't care who wins any of it, and I do care who's a part of it. But what I really want to do is make the thing that is, and I talked about this. It's an important point to note that the very first ever recording I ever did when I left Games Workshop was on the Scrubby and Wells podcast. And if you ever message him, maybe you'll have it. And he asks me, "What is my goal?"
He's a treasure, like a community treasure. He's an absolutely fantastic individual.
So Tyler asked me what my goal was, and my goal was to sit in an audience while I watched the World Cup of Warhammer happening with some of those clickers that you get at League of Legends events.
And
what
they are like vuvuzela, like get it, wow.
Not that.
No.
Flag.
But the little
giant foam finger, and I just want to sit. And in that analogy, in that story, it's really important. I'm not the commentator. I'm not the player. Yeah, I'm not the show. I'm not doing any of it. I'm sat because I'm a fan. Like, I'm a fan. It's the stupidest thing. I just want to make the thing I want to watch. Yeah? So I'm going to go make the thing that I want to watch. Right. And then I can be an old man and just watch the thing I want to watch. Right. It's easy. It's not easy, but, I'm just going to do that.
Yeah. No, it's a little bit of the V for Vendetta thing is, like, you're trying to, like, set up a canvas for other people to paint upon, but you're going to be happy that, like, I did the thing so that everyone else can now go forward.
There's not even that. Like, I mean, there will be pride because I'm proud if I work and do something well, but like, it's not because I want to do it. So just someone, like, I want a thing, so I'm going to make the thing happen. Like, it's got nothing to do with like me, if per se. Like, it's not I want to do it. It's just I want it to happen. And no one else is trying to make it happen.
Yeah, see, I wanted a shirt with my name on it and stickers, so I made a whole podcast 1 year ago.
Okay, there you go. See,
no, I get it. I totally get it, 100%. Well, I mean, I guess we've kind of danced around, or we've talked about a lot of the why and the inception of the Super Series. what is the Super Series, right? Like, what is okay? Boom, you've been crushing it a year and a half. R&D, you've been putting in the work, accruing the talent, player talent and stuff like that as part of the talent process too. You're doing all the hard stuff. What's this look like rolling out? What is it, first of all, in case someone in the world knows me but doesn't know about this? Like,
Okay.
like, what is it for the one person who just liked Mr. Mephisto because like I have a cool skull emoji and they like clicked on it one time and they never watched the Honest Wargamer? What is the Super Series? Put into words, and what is what is ideal? What's the best case scenario? Obviously, you sitting in the audience, but like, what's the next step? What's that look like?
Okay. So it's a team Warhammer tournament, which happens in each country or region, eventually with nationals in a country, ending with a national champion, which in of itself is great. The best version of that is that those national champions eventually play each other. Yeah. And what it's meant to do. What it's meant to do is create a groundswell locally. Yeah, it's meant to give a vehicle for people in their local communities, develop some skill sets together to go and play. And it's also meant, and this is really important, to give a place to put these people, so that TOs can go, do you know what, guys? We're doing Realms. Here's some other random stuff I'm throwing in. Anvils of Apotheosis is in. It's going to be a great event. Beers are £3 a jug, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a great time. And it's just like, oh, this isn't that competitive. It's like, it doesn't have to be. There's a thing there. Like, it's a thing. It's like, it's imbalanced. Who cares? Like, it's fun. You're having fun.
Yeah. I'm going to go to football real quick because people have Chacking has referenced the Packers a couple times. You're like complaining about like, okay, so the TO that groundswell level does the thing, the vehicle that you've given them, and they're like, okay, Anvil of Apotheosis is in. You can't use Ethereal because I think it's a problem, even though I'm wrong, and minimum 100 points. Like, they make the changes they want to do at that ground level. They do the event. One, it's hard to win 5 games of Warhammer. I don't care what the modification is. Two, complaining about some of those granular changes at that grassroots level is like complaining that you played my football team in the snow. Like,
yes,
I'm like, it's part of the game. I'm not interested in like a pure vacuum sense. 100% all the ideal things, because to me the best general adapts too. The best football team is the one that beats you in your snow-laden field, then goes into a dome that's like 90 degrees and whoops your ass there. Like, that's what I want to see when I want to see excellence achieved. I want to see excellent people defying like statistics. I want to see them crushing, like, okay, they lost every priority roll. I want to see that underdog lose every priority roll and still crush it at the end. I want the shoutcasters hyped about it. Like, oh my god, he didn't win a priority roll and he still he ran it back all the way. Like, I want that hype. That stuff is engaging to me. There's a
what I think about this is the vehicle for that.
Yeah.
Because the most important thing for me has been consistently, how will the audience be entertained?
Right.
Like, what can I do? Like multi-table coverage, which we did earlier in the year, is a little bit more frantic and frenetic, and you don't get what I quite like. And this is a personal thing, which is just the methodical, slow process of a tactical game of Warhammer. But you do get 4 consistent story points that you can, like, Nagash is dead. Okay, over there, like, next table, the Maw Crusher's gone in and he's completely whiffed. Next table, priority roll has actually gone to him. That's massive, etc., etc. You can keep just jumping around. Yeah. So already you've got loads of stuff. But how does that relate to the meta story of everything that's going on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And then suddenly you've got things happening over 3 rounds. That's really cool. These guys are playing again. Interesting. There's the draw process again at the start. Always interesting. Another really fun drama point there. What's going on? Like, how are they going to take it? Now it's the same armies, maybe playing different people, but a different battle plan. Mm-hmm. So you, as a new guy, you're like, okay, a Legion of Nagash army, interesting, with like corpse carts and direwolves. Like, okay,
what?
How's this gonna?
The Numalia, Court of Numalia. What the? Yeah.
But you watch it and you've seen it play in game 1, but you see it played in a mission with lots of objectives, and you're like, oh, okay, I really like that army. Then you've seen it struggle in Knife to the Heart. and you're like, okay, I'm like, then you've seen it do well in or badly in a multi-objective game, but because the other player has got like certain answers, and you get to see that as well as the other one, so you get that juxtaposition. So you get to go on a journey and you get to understand it in a day.
Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. 34 months, Haywo. Haywo says, green screen plaid shirt man is funny.
I tried to explain Haywo to my girlfriend today. Yeah,
he's so beyond peer and without explanation. He's
yeah. So she's on the spectrum. So whenever I make a joke, I always do this so that she understands I'm being sarcastic. I just go like this. She goes, "Okay, yeah, I understand. Thank you for helping me."
Yep.
And she was like, "So she's like, what's he like?" I was like, "You couldn't talk to him. Like he'd just be this, like consistently every word laden." Yeah, beauty resplendent. Anyway, I'll stop fanboying.
Resplendent, like the dryness and like his deadpan is beyond reproach. Enough of how great Haywo is, though. No, what you're talking about with like the multi coverage versus the single coverage. To me, my brain goes back to shoutcasting because I truly have a passion for like talking. It turns out like I love talking when a game's going on. But you invent storylines with this. Right, like when you talk about like, ideal like regionally, you win the thing, and then eventually we like the countries have their winner. Like I'm gonna go on and talk smack about USA winning the thing. You're gonna talk about England, like Australia's gonna like have stuff. Maybe like Japan shows up to the table. Like you're gonna have these like cool little storylines that are beginning to build themselves in a meta sense. And then when you're at the micro sense at the table, the shoutcasters, can build that storyline. You go this with statistics. You go, okay, this matchup is kind of like this. This army doesn't do very well against that army, but it's got a way better win rate on this battle plan, and you can build that stuff into the narrative as it's going along when you're shoutcasting and stuff like that. Which is just, this is why like I think coverage in games, where I think coverage in games can improve is actually in baking in storylines instead of just don't tell me just what's going on, tell me why I care about what's going on. And this isn't just at you. This is at dear audience. If you're wondering how to improve your coverage, from my perspective, who did it semi-professionally for a little while, is tell me why I care about the game. What's going on? You can tell me why should I care? Oh, these two opponents have a history. Let me know that. Like these two armies have a history. Let me know that. Like this battle plan is unique in this respect. Let me know that. And then filling dead air. That's just something we all do in all broadcast, right? The movement phase is basically dead air. So this is where like Dan Unsupervised was fantastic at this when he still was at Bobo a couple years ago. He just you'd cut to him as man on the floor during like boring movement phase, right? Or or you'd have like on the mic just filling it in with that color commentary, setting the scene, what's going on, why do I care about these opponents and stuff like that. That's a really great avenue to get color and story into the game. There's a really great sports journalist. His whole thing is like, but what's the story? There will always be another sports game. Why do you care about this one right now? That's why. Go ahead.
And that's the important part of the Super Series is that instead of it being all in one, because that was one of the problems. Again, identify problem. LVO is going to happen. Yeah, let's pick that. Adepticon, Holy Havoc, pick an event. Yeah, I'm so hyped for this. And you're like, okay, but the real hype builds up about the week before. Yeah, and the event happens and it lasts one day after the event happens and it's done.
Yeah,
you're out for a year. Yeah, and for some people that's the highlight of their year, and for some people that's not. But for building storylines, it's really weak. Whereas everything that happens week by week, yeah, in a Super Series is awesome. And also because you're the team waiting to play, or you're the guys that are supporting the team waiting to play, yeah, and you're like, oh, those guys are through. Oh, that's going to be tough because if we win our bracket, we're going to be playing those guys. Okay, that's really interesting. I liked how they played. There's so much constant conversation happening around those elements that are integrating into each other, which I think is really important. And then if everyone in the world is doing the same thing at the same time, then you get to have a grand meta conversation. So it's not, there's an event in Australia in 4 weeks, which is after Battletome, and there's an event in America 2 weeks. This is obviously without COVID existing. 2 weeks before 2 weeks before that was in America, but between then there was a Battletome release, and maybe the meta has shifted quite considerably, or maybe those metas are very different. It's very hard to have a conversation where they relate at all. And it's also hard, as an example, like the Brishammer guys have got the Brishammer event, so that's over in Brisbane. They've got their Brishammer event happening in October, but it's really hard to have someone in Canada care what's happening to some Age of Sigmar players in Brisbane. It's actually really hard to make everyone in Australia care, or the Eastern guys to care what's happening in Western Australia, let alone like what's happening in Sweden or Norway or Denmark. So why does everyone care what everyone's doing? And the answer is they don't really, and you shouldn't have to, because it's not really part of your world, and that's fine. Like, that makes loads of sense. However, if we give a vehicle to everyone to create a reason for us all to care, then that's going to be really valuable, because people will be like, actually, did you see what all the Aussies did with their bands? And then they turned up with these units. And it's like, or these armies. It's like, that's super cool. That's a great lesson that we can learn for our team. So there's loads of cross-pollination, because people can start having those conversations. Also, a little bit of an eye on the prize. It's like, who is going to win? Which team is going to take out that tournament at that country? Because we might be playing them. Yeah, so we need to pay attention, and I think that'll be that's loads of storylines happening all at the same time.
Yeah, you're giving
loads of storylines.
Right. So you did mention it here, and Chacking's actually referenced wanting to know about bands. How did you come upon bands? The notion of like having bands, is this for the story? It makes every week a little bit different, everything a little bit more progressively interesting. Is it comp by a different name? Like why bands? Why did you go with this? Is it because Malifaux did it and League of Legends has a band phase, so let's just throw it in there? Why bands? How did you come to that, and how do you think that's going to impact your events?
Well, I genuinely didn't know Malifaux did it, so that's rad.
I don't know if they did. I just threw it out there. The only mini game that exists to me is Age of Sigmar. I don't even know what 40K is.
Well, it's because it's quite. So I obviously started playing Age of Sigmar doing 8th edition. So comp isn't a negative to me, but it isn't comp. What it is I attended the Age of Sigmar Six Nations event last year with Speckles. We did some coverage, which was great. And every single Flesh Eater Courts list had exactly the same list. But it was really fun, because for Speckles loves Flesh Eater Courts. So I'm like, Speckles, what's in the list? And he'd be like, well, they can actually take different lists, you know. Like, they don't have to all take the same one. Yeah. And I'm like, but they are. And why are they? It's because it's the most effective and efficient list. And now that's really cool from a competitive sense, and you can tell that story. You don't need the bands to exist. However, for that percentage of people who you talked about before, who aren't at the top of the game, who are like, why can't you take anything? Yeah, right. Why? Like, I've always like pocket picks in leagues. You know, like the champ that you've been working on, or the Street Fighter character you've been working on for a while, like that no one knows the surprise.
You got
factor.
that pocket Ken. You got the pocket Ken you've been working on. You got your heart. You got your heart. You're a G player, but your hard matchup or your hard counters coming down the line. So you've been practicing the pocket Ken all year long to go to Capcom Cup and then pull out the pocket Ken in the finals and like just rush down somebody. It's fantastic. This is story, by the way. This is I'm advocating for Devils here a little bit when I ask the question leading into it, but I think that's dramatic. You're adding drama. It would be my answer, but please continue. I just had to, you got me talking Street Fighter and stuff, and I love the
no because like, and I'm not reinventing the wheel, right? Like, everyone has done it, or like, and people have tried to put them into different game systems because they recognize that it creates excellent drama. But also my experiences of going everywhere is I could turn up to an event and like CanCon, I was like, it's going to be won by Tzeentch. Like, I'm there telling you before it happens that's the result, and I'm like, it's not if Tzeentch win, it's which Tzeentch list wins. Yeah, let's find out this weekend. And that isn't a problem in of itself, but it isn't very exciting, or it takes some of it takes the drama away, right? Like, it does. Like it has to. It takes the momentum away, like the mystery. And I feel like that there's more in there, or maybe there's not, but I think that it's the case that if the world isn't the way it works, but also like it keys into, because this is the other thing about the Super Series that I want to make it. I want it to be the most representative of the hobby, which is playing Warhammer, that it can be. Mm-hmm. And that's really important, because we are, while able to steal things off other game systems like banning stuff and teams and all sorts of things, we are ourselves, and there is something unique about our game which should be a key element of what we're doing, right?
Right.
And that key element is we love list writing.
Oh,
yeah, we love it.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's fun. We like talking about whether units are good or bad.
Yep.
Yeah,
We love it.
Excellent. We love talking about that, and this keys into both of those things. Yeah, we like seeing different lists or dynamic, interesting lists that we haven't seen before.
Also, I like styling on you with something that you tell me is suboptimal, right? Like I love to style on people with Beasts of Chaos. I'm just moonwalking, not losing a game to Slanesh for like a couple months when they're OP, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this army that's got a 40% win rate, suck it. Like styling on people also feels great. But you want to give people relevance to do that, because especially in like a team tournament, like when you have to lock in and worry about stuff, like now you give them, you say, get ready to style on folk, right? You say, hey, like have that pocket kit ready to style on something or whatever.
And you also give those players the ability to be exceptional, and also like you get exceptional list strikers. Yeah, you get problem solving. You get to see dynamic results, and it's one of those really interesting things. Like that's why we've given them that week. So ban on a Monday, listen on a Thursday. You got 3 days to like prep, plan, maybe practice. It's not a lot of time. No. It's not a lot of time. And I think that people are coming to the event with 2 lists in their head. They're like, I'm hoping to play this, but my backup's this. Yeah. But it also means that those top level players, they aren't going, well, if they are the people who attend the event, right? It means that in their off time when they're playing at singles events or they're practicing other stuff.
They're club nights. They're club nights. They're experimenting in those club nights. They're performing list science. They're busting out what if you can't ban battle lines in your format, but what if this backbone core unit of my army gets banned out? What does a optimal list look like without this thing? Lord of Change is going to go. Lord of Change is getting banned if I'm running like thing, or Gaunt Summoner more realistically, right? What does a more optimized version of my list look like now that I can't lean on that? Like you're causing a puzzle. You're going, here's a puzzle. This is why I actually don't mind when an army is kind of pushed out the gates, because I go, this is a puzzle, this is a problem. Now I get to solve it. Like I like doing that. You're doing that at your tournament. You're going to have a problem to solve every week, or every span of the event. You have a problem to solve. What if your best thing gets banned? Solve the problem. Like I like that. You're forcing people to think.
But then we're also telling the crowd to solve the problem. So then people in their groups are like, I don't understand why that thing was banned, and then they're talking to each other and they're explaining. They're like, well, actually, look at this. This is what. I did not know that. And everyone is leveling up their system mastery and their knowledge through the game. And they're like, that's cool. And then you obviously lead into the event with a whole bunch of drama. Yeah, it's really fun. And I like that. I think that that's cool. I think there's some really fun elements to that which people get to explore. And I'm not set on it yet. I'm not set on should it be 5? Should it be 4? The ordering, like it's not perfect yet. Like I've had loads of thoughts about it and I've had loads of feedback on it already, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, the youngest, so I'm just going to have like an 18-year-old ringer every tournament so I can get the first ban. Like
But then go find yourself go find yourself an 18-year-old who's playing Warhammer, because actually maybe that's harder to do, or maybe you as an adult in the community get to help bring up a young man who maybe feels a bit disenfranchised. Maybe I don't imagine there's a lot of people who think, oh, you play toy soldiers at 18. Please get in my pants. Give them
all right.
I'm talking about I'm talking about their prospective partners, not the older men. I'm trying to say that it's not the most attractive. It's not the most attractive thing, is what I'm trying to say. Although I think it is sexy.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say, that was my initial pitch, was do the younger thing, because I was like, that would be cool to help older fellas help take people under their wing. Yeah. I was like, that's cool, but that's been thrown back to me. It's like, look, you're trying to run something serious and competitive. You need to take that out. And I'm like, yep, that's just me trying to be more high-minded and a little bit nicer than I should be, maybe, about it, the whole situation.
This is where
naively sweet.
In writing,
no one's ever called me that.
In writing, you got to go back to your premise. What was my core premise? So this is just revisit the core premise. Does it serve your core premise? I don't know what your core premise is. I won't pretend to understand the mind of Rob Symes, but you got to go back to your core premise on that one. If you're running into conflict and pushback, and if your audience says, hey, why are you doing this thing? And then you look at it and you go, it serves my core premise because my core premise is X, then you keep it. If not, then you jettison it from the game, or from your format. I think one pushback I've seen in like various like Twitter and stuff like that is you've created a system trying to not be prohibitive, right? You don't want to exchange one old man's club for another old man's club. You know, you don't want to swap one nepotism for another one. Some people fear that like a ban system might be prohibitive because you got to have the extra range of models. 3 days isn't a lot of time, right? Like,
yeah, but also 200 people aren't playing at this event. Like, in the sweetest way, if you're the guy who owns only one army with one set of models, you ain't the target market to be the player base. Like, that's not you. Like, and that doesn't mean you can't be. Yeah, doesn't mean that isn't the vehicle for you.
Now you're telling them. Yeah. Now you're doing my thing, which is telling them to get good at having more models.
No, that's not what I mean. It's not about owning that amount. What it means is that you are not practiced enough or have that level of systematry, in my opinion. Yeah, to be like to be someone who like someone goes, oh hey, can you only play one army in one build? Yes, I can. Well, actually, look at the system that this is. That would be really inflexible and useless to be a part of. Yeah, it's like, thank you. Like, and that's where I'm hoping the coaches and team managers are really going to lean on developing good squads and community like groups. And also, it pushes players to adapt outside of factions and things that they do as well. Like, and also, but I've already had like some feedback. There were some guys over in Denmark. They're like, look, we've got a really young community here. Not necessarily think that we can expand. If we wanted to run a super series here, not necessarily certain that we'd be able to like justify banning people, like banning units. It's like, okay, well then just run your super series without that. If that needs to be your, like, if you can't justify it, yeah. But the best version of this, because it's the most interesting for the viewer, is that like, and people are like, well, that affects me as a player. I'm like, yeah. I don't care about that. Like, because I'm not trying to make this for you. I'm trying to make this for the viewers who want to have really entertaining sports Warhammer. Yeah. That's who I'm trying to entertain. If you can't be a part of it as a player, then don't be. If you don't want to be a part of it as a player, which some people will not want to be, then don't be. Like, it's really optional. But I hope that you'll tune in, because I hope that you'll think it's interesting, because it's meant to put loads of buttons that you like. That's the purpose of it.
Right. No, I think that's legit. Legit pushback to the pushback. Making a straw man for you to argue against. Chat's talking about Tzeentch and stuff right now. Who would ban Bulgors? What about So like it's one per faction. So I could like actually like targeted ban something in my own army to make sure that you don't ban the thing. So like I ban a Razor Gore, but then I've used my ban for that. That ban advantage, right?
Yeah, so it's 5 bans per team currently, and you can't ban Battle Line. You can't, and once you ban a unit, then there is an FAQ on fun stuff like Legions of Chaos Ascendant, Cities of Sigmar. But effectively, think of your book as a home book. Nagash is an awkward one, actually. But think of every book as having basically a home book, and you can pretty much get where it goes. And you can't ban Battle Line units, but once you've banned a unit from that book, you cannot anymore ban units from that book. Now, there are loads of other versions of this that are more restrictive. Like, you have to be army locked before you turn up to the event. Yeah? But that means there's a lot less armies that get played. Like, you don't play KO. Yeah? Like, or maybe you do. Maybe you do. Someone's like, I banned the Ironclad. It's like, actually, maybe I can make a frigate build. Whatever. Yeah? Like, maybe that's the case. Maybe you got 2 builds and that's what it is. But there's an army locked version that's more serious, and I haven't installed that yet. I'm not sure if I ever will, but there's a version there. There's also a version where there's no safety. It's just like, ban what you like. Yeah. This version that I've currently put in.
Sorry, it's the Ice Bowl. It just snowed. Like, deal with it. Work on that running game. Like, go ahead.
So this version is trying to answer the pushback before I get it, in that it's the most open version of creating some restriction. Like, in this version, almost everything has the potential to be viable. Every army, every playstyle has the potential to be viable. Like, and I also give you a way to protect yourself if you need it, but it might come at a cost. So what are your bans? It's important. Like, is it? And I think like Hayway was saying like on Twitter and some other guys as well. Like, I'm just going to do defensive bans. I'm like, okay, that's quite cool. But then you're telling me, and you're telegraphing what you're bringing, because there's a meta game there, right? What 4 armies are you bringing? What 4 armies am I bringing? It's like, well, you've just safety banned.
They're blind reveals, right? You're revealing your army sort of at the picking your opponent phase of this super series.
So lists are in like on the Thursday. So Friday they go out. So both teams have got time to research their opponent's list. So there's a lot less like admin at the tabletop.
Okay.
So
that
they're
just
available.
makes for a cleaner game, also. Like that.
But between the ban phase and list in, there is a time period. Okay. So if I safety ban, let's say Razorgore, which means I'm bringing Beast of Chaos. Yeah. Right. But that could be a fake. Yeah. Does that mean that you're bringing Beast of Chaos? Or what's the answer to Beast of Chaos that I can bring? Yeah. So there's a whole meta game that these players love playing anyway, and they're going to do it in 3 days.
I say I like this. This is the kind of gamesmanship I love. By the way, this is the kind of gamesmanship I thoroughly enjoy. I like the mental aspect of the thing. You know, the mental chess of the picks and bans. This is something I really enjoy, and I think it would have surprised people. I was careful not to like talk a lot about this because I knew we would talk on the show, and I was careful to preserve my opinion on this because this is something I think people would be surprised to find out I thoroughly enjoy. What about alternate things like this, though? Like sideboards, you know? Like, I guess you don't need it because of the nature of going into the tournament with your list going into it, but there was some other potential for design space, like showing up.
Yeah, there is, but it's also confusing for an audience. I'm trying to trim it down so that because there's already enough information to impart. I've got to impart 8 lists to the audience. But the draw phase will be a really easy time to relate that information. Like, this army probably doesn't want to play this army. This is a good matchup. This is a bad matchup. So during the matchup phase, you've already got that conversation as well. So there's already stuff. There's already a lot of information to impart to the audience. Saying that they could randomly change stuff halfway through is a bit like, that's a lot to add, I think. And again, we're trying to get the full gamut of people who might be interested, and maybe even people that have never even played Warhammer, people who play computer games or other stuff who are just like, okay, I see what you're doing. You're doing people who play chess, Go, like other tabletop stuff that they're not like, they haven't necessarily played it and they're just in, I guess.
We've got a couple comments here from Chat Gang. So first of all, we got Chaos Spawn. Can we place bets on what get banned on a separate site?
See, there's room for that, right?
It's not a real sport until you have place bets. Let's go. Like, you gotta be able to bet on it. Then it's a real sport. But you have
exactly. And that's what I hope happens. By the way, I hope that there's an entire industry that just exists because this thing exists, which is be cool.
Yeah. But not for the ego. I mean, if it were me, it would be for the ego because I'm a pure egoist. But you're a lot more humble than me. Jared here. Would this style of event be considered invite only or open? I think he kind of said this at the onset, but you might have missed it.
Yeah. So as stated before, the intent is that there is always a pathway into being in a super series. Yeah. So there's always a way for you to either join a team. Because this is actually, if you go on the site or if you see how I've been speaking about it, the coaches element has been really important to me. Because the coaches part, and coach can't be, I say coach because I wanted the sports affectation, but really I mean team manager. And the reason that the team manager / coach exists in that role is specifically to help grow a community around that team and to help people cycle into the team. Yeah, and develop better teams. So you need someone who can lead from the front, and just like I hope I'm a better caster in 4 years, I hope there are a good bunch of team managers in 4 years who are better at being team managers than anyone we've ever seen before, because they spent 4 years doing it.
You could call it a manager, club manager, or team manager. Since we play baseball over here in America, not that weird mutant game with the flaccid bat. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
They're called managers, not coaches. So you could do that. Like, that'd be fine if that's what you want to convey. Yeah. We'd get it.
Okay.
I don't know about... It is nice to know what the Americans get, because
you know sometimes you are like hamstrung by your weakest link.
Too soon.
It's okay.
Too
That's
soon.
the Welsh.
Haywo says putting money on Morsar Guard banned every Super Series. Well, that's where you're going to want a defensive ban, right? Like you're going to ban a what's the really crappy foot hero? Oh, Lotan. Can you ban names?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can ban anything than Battleline.
Yeah. Just ban Lotan. There you go.
But this is the thing. Like I find that fascinating. The fakey on the list reveals will be huge, right? Like I ban Lotan, I expect eels. Like I safety ban Lotan, I expect eels. I write a list to counter eels. Eels never turn up on the day. It's awesome.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Like
fantastic.
Yeah. Like and you're just like, what's happening now? And so you're almost blind picking. So you're really asking yourself, what does the meta look like with these things removed? And that goes to the problem of a stagnant meta, when maybe Games Workshop are focusing on 40k for a while, so we don't get anything.
Yeah, no new tomes to force innovation, right? Like we're stuck with whatever the state was before.
Something's just way OP.
Yeah. Colonel Cabbage, the coach role sounds appealing, but I'm shit at the game. What does Rob recommend? I don't know what you want from him.
Because you don't, coach, I think maybe I've created a problem for myself in calling it the coach role. So I recognise that and admit that.
Glad to help you.
But
glad we could help.
But I guess the coach idea really is like I do talk about coaching teams or team management. Like I think when teams start to be revealed. And you start to talk about those, you could maybe suggest or offer to be a helper for those teams. Just be like, what do you need? It's like, well, actually, the stats for all these different armies or builds, or like, who knows? Yeah, like who knows what those team managers. Let me tell you what I never want to do: be a team manager at all, because I reckon you could take that so seriously and do it so well, and that is outside of my skill sets, and I don't care. But you could do it. You could do it really well.
I'm on the flip side where like I'm a total nerd for this sort of thing. I would love this, and I would get into it. I would show up in. There's a question here asked in chat. Chaos Spawn, can the players wear NASCAR style jumpsuits with sponsors plastered on them?
Hells yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other.
I
other
would go
point.
full kayfabe. WWE, like wrestling all the way, acting out like heels and faces and stuff like that, like making like the NWO and stuff like the. I would go hard. I'd show up in like a flamboyant costume as the team manager, and like while the game, conceivably the game's happening at a tournament or whatever, like I'd be like doing like cheeky stuff and like trying to block the view of like the TOs or something like that. While like some of my players like try to knuckle units forward, like total. I would be in a total persona. That's where my brain went when I saw your announcement. I'm like, we can finally have what I want, which is walk-up music and like personas on like out there gaming. One of my favorite moments in all they asked the 5 years of Age of Sigmar. What was some of your favorite memories? Randy versus Joe Pagano at CanCon, like with the walk-up music, the belt. Like this is what I want. I love that.
Mm-hmm. We never want esports style intros because they suck. Like they're like cringe-y. But we want WWE walk-ins definitely. This is the point about it, I guess. Is it's meant to be a vehicle for all of those things. The skeleton, if anything, that you can attach all of those elements onto as we go forward. And I think that that's the thing I'm most excited about is seeing what people bring to the party, because there's the sponsorship thing is actually really interesting, because I really hope to get teams sponsored at some point and the Super Series. But I like the idea of, not because of any financial stuff, although obviously that would be phenomenal and help loads, but just because of the gravitas maybe it brings to the jumpsuits with the things. You laugh, but I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And also merch. Like you got a favorite team. Like let's say
really
Darren comes in your full role play. Like he's dressed as a Tomb King or whatever he might be dressed as. Like Randy is, and you're just like, sweet, I'm that team. Like they've got me, because if you look at
projection, right? Like you're projecting at that point.
Yeah. So I spent a long time, again after Bobo. I told you, doing a lot of research. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. So I read a couple of books about sports psychology, specifically like team dynamics and individual dynamics. Like people are almost and it's obviously incredibly relevant based on social issues that we're seeing right now. But people are tribal, right? They pick their tribe and they stick with their tribe forever. Like, doesn't matter what. Like,
it's fun and awesome in games, but that's where that shit belongs. Fuck your nerd tribalism for real, and fuck your racism. Get the hell out. But continue. Like that's like it's fun when it's cheeky and it's amusing. Like, I was geographically closer to this sports team, so that's the one I like. Ha ha ha. Right? That stuff is fun. That's fine. You know.
Yeah, and I hope to create that, because
real quick,
that will.
Soren, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs. Everyone, you just got a gift sub. Please enjoy it. Spam the emojis in the Honest Wargamers chat tomorrow. I'm sure you're on tomorrow because you're always on. Just go in there and spam the Nagash emotes. I hear Rob loves Nagash. It's his favorite model, so make sure he sees.
I played him when he had a Turp Ethereal save way back in the day. Like, he's not even that obnoxious now.
Yeah, no, he's how the mighty have become in bounds. Continue. Sorry. Yeah, so your goal, your dream, you know, the to create this environment. Continue your point.
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay, cool.
I think I've talked about it plenty, and there are loads of other key points that we haven't discussed as well, and some that aren't public. I'll give you one for having me on the show. So one of the things that is really interesting is we oftentimes don't talk about terrain well enough at all, I don't think. So a project that we have going on at the moment, which is very involved, far more involved than I want it to be, I'd like everyone to be aware, is the matchup process, which is interesting. So if you don't know how the matchup process works, there are 4 players on each team with an army. They both put in a defender, which is blind, and then they put in 2 attackers, so then they reveal the defenders, then they put in 2 attackers, which are blind, then they reveal those, and then the defender picks an attacker to fight against. The other defender picks an attacker to fight against. And then the other ones go against. Now, I'm proposing bottom bitch, but apparently that's not okay.
Yeah,
I got vetoed on that hard. Like, there's a lot of like really, really boring conversations we have. I'm like, bottom bitch for the last card. No, Rob. But come on! It's like, what do you want to do? Be an asshole or be a professional? And I'm like, I guess I'll be a professional.
But then but that's the thing is, like, the person who's just like the ringer on your team would be the power bottom.
Mm-hmm. Another suggestion, but not allowed. So.
Sweetest taboo, my bottom bitch. Yeah. You're in rare form tonight, sweetest taboo. Has not hitting a bitch been working for you? I mean, scientifically speaking. Have you seen Boondocks? Have you not seen Boondocks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Half of my persona is just quoting like Boondocks and stuff like that. Magical Mr. Mephisto. Yes, it's the a pimp named Slickback of Warhammer. You got to say the whole thing every time.
Every time.
Every time.
Every time.
Yes, Tom. Every time. No, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah. So you had some really boring stuff. Terrain is what you're on this hot goss we're about to get right now.
Well, I don't know if it is. We'll see what everything seems really involved when you're in it, right? But one of the things that we don't ever talk about is terrain, oftentimes. So terrain can vary at an event, and we talked about X event is this setup, X event is another setup, especially when it comes to terrain. Is a good example. Could be in realms, could be 6 games, whatever. So. Well, the first thing we talked about the honesty of the game. So each one of our boards will have a name. It will have a name, and it will have a backstory, and it will have. So we won't be going to table 1. We'll be going to. I don't know what the name of it yet. The shit graveyard of something.
Volcano Madness, right? Like it's Volcano Town, or like.
But a little bit more involved than that,
or like whatever.
Yeah. A little bit more involved than that. We're gonna actually write some story. It's gonna have its own page on the website.
Ew, are you doing narrative?
Yes, because it's an incredibly important part of the hobby, right?
Wait, I can't like multiple things about the game of Age of Sigmar, Rob. Why are you doing this to me?
Just to really fuck with people.
Ew, narrative. Like, and then I just like turn my nose up. This is going to be competitive now.
Yeah. Well, here's the fun part. So they'll all have their own story, and they'll all be like, we've got some really cool ones, and I'll reveal those in the future. I'm really, really excited for those, and the guys working on them are really talented, so it's going to be fun. But also, what it means is that when we talked about those story elements that we talked about before, when you see Army A fighting on whatever the table might be, they will become places for us as the Super Series goes on. And you'll be like, fuck, yeah, remember when the Mega Boss died there at that point?
Yeah.
That was cool.
This involves that narrative we were talking about.
Always, that's the only important bit. It's narrative. We're storytellers. We play Warhammer. Like, we're storytellers as people. And then,
Yep.
But the dynamically interesting part for you rules guys out there is that the boards will be defined as 3 types of board. Light, medium, and heavy. Yeah? And the density of the terrain will change between light, medium, and heavy. There'll be 1 heavy board, there'll be 1 light board, and there'll be 2 medium boards every round. And why this is really cool is during the pairing phase, people will pair. You'll have different advantages. So round 1, you'll get to pair into the heavy. Round 2, you'll get to pair into the light, etc., etc. So the teams will get like a bit, and there's a sliding scale where if you're behind in 3, you get to choose what you want to pair into. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a super fun element to that, where we get to design actual terrain maps, which aren't very standard around the world. And then people can just go, cool, I'm going to have all my events have light terrain and or heavy terrain. And we've defined them, I've written them out. They'll be all available for people to download for free, just like cool, this is my maps, this is what I want to do. And it's a really fun element, which adds to that drama. Because yes, your Sylvaneth army will be terrible on a heavy board. But maybe on light terrain boards, Sylvaneth armies are much better than we currently see them as medium boards, which is tournament standard. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe there's the capacity to bring a Sylvaneth army and do really well, but know that you're always going to put it into the light board. Yeah. Then there's that tactical challenge. Is that knowledge enough to deal with it? Like the ability to put down those trees, is that workable? Is that good? Like, but in heavy shooting builds, actually, yeah, we don't want to put the heavy shooting build into the heavy terrain. So that has to go somewhere else. That means it can't be our first defender. There's so many tactical elements in there when it comes to list writing and putting things together, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, there's stuff to game, which is what's like super impressive. It also creates a sort of like a home stadium effect, like away team, home team, I think, which is kind of cool. Like if you're the one who's like you're kind of making your dead ringer to like go on the heavy terrain table, you're gonna start like shooting for that. Like I want to play on this table. This is the home turf, right? Like I'm defending this. I think that's cool.
Yeah. I think it's cool, and I also think the narrative element is fun. I think the additional tactical element, it ticks all the boxes. I like story, great. I like cool looking models and boards, great.
Yeah.
I like tactics and strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like tactics and strategy, also great.
Question from chat gang here. Where did you go? There you go. How will FAQs affect the Super Series?
How do you mean? What's the question?
I think you need to clarify that, Chaos. Like as in like GW FAQs. He's going to have his own FAQs for some of the stuff, I'd imagine, to clarify certain interactions until it becomes ubiquitous and known. While we wait for him to catch up there. What I think is interesting about this is something like you touched on earlier, which is like internal parity. I think there's a community parity element. Every time I have an opinion on the internet, I'm hoping to make the community a little bit better at the game of Age of Sigmar, like across, like I think by having something exposed and like some exposure and consistent that goes outside of, especially with the bands, people are going to be playing different lists, which is going to get people to think about not the list every time. Sometimes the list exists because it's the most efficient way to build that list. Sometimes it exists because someone's just really good at the game of Age of Sigmar, takes it to a tournament and wins with it, and the community is like, that's got to be the list, because smart, good player at the game of Age of Sigmar played that list, and then they just like jettison out. This happened with Cities. Like Cities, there were a lot of strong builds in that book that people just avoided for a little bit because they're like, oh, the only way to play this, the best competitive list is this Hallowheart list right here, this one. Here. Well, now the meta is getting to a point where Hallowheart could be a liability against Techless. You're never going to get your bridge off. It's gone. Like, no, you just don't get that. That's not something your army does right now. So now you need to think about maybe Living Cities or some of these other armies that project their power. Hi, buddy. Ganked by
Hey, bud.
nephew. So yeah, I think that what's a sort of like tertiary thing that's going to happen is that this is going to be one of those like rising tides that's going to lift all boats. As you develop a lexicon for language, which is something we talked about early on with shoutcasting, as you develop a lexicon for language, we identify chaff. There's a point in time where people don't know what chaff was, right? Like, like GavBomb made sure you had to know what screening and chaff was. You weren't allowed. It was never like the greatest army ever, but it was a casual stopper. It just pub stomped people until they learned. No, set your chaff lines. But more importantly than knowing, hey, I've got to set my chaff lines, they learned the distance and the ranges they needed to be safe when they set those chaff lines. That sort of second degree of knowledge. People are going to learn stuff like that from a series along these lines. I think like that.
That's the hope.
My own
That's
personal
the hope.
Take.
That's the purpose of it, is to entertain and inform.
Oh.
And then.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish.
That's it.
Yep.
It's meant to be entertain and inform. Go for it.
And then Chaos Respawn clarified: is there going to be a grace period for implementations of FAQs, like 4 weeks out, the rules get locked in, or anything released after is ignored? I think this can actually double for like battle tomes, right? Like
same. 4 week grace period.
4 week grace
upon
period.
Release. Okay. Yeah. That seems fair enough. There's also breaks between rounds, so between brackets. So when round 1 happens, round 2's starting up. Because obviously it's a single elimination bracket. So like you'll go through to the next bracket. There'll be a period of time. It's not very long though, but you'll have that window of opportunity, which is good. To like clarify. Also, I feel like the timeline shouldn't be too long on these. In some cases, you could have very long ones. Also, the problem of logistics is not something that's come up. Why is it every week? It's so those storylines can continue for a bit longer. They can have some validity to them. You can understand them, and you can invest. Like, it's good if there's a little bit longer to invest in. It's tough to invest just in a weekend and be done, right?
Colonel Cabbage, I never had to face GavBomb. Consequently, I'm still bad at setting my chaff walls. Also, I often use Bulgors as chaff. Well, that you're misidentifying the role of what a Bulgor is. So, that's the great strength of Beasts of Chaos, is you have one of the most underrated units in the entire game of Age of Sigmar, which is Ungor Raiders. They're like the optimal chaff next to like actual Ungors, where they're just like 60-point idiots that you just throw here. But that scout move and the outflank makes them insanely good. Between the versatility in their kit, they're really good.
I agree.
So, Mr. Mephisto, no, people come to me and my Bulgors hit them. Oh no, all right. Galaxy Brain, I got it. All right. like if you want to have your Bulgors fighting stuff, and one of the downsides of the Bulgors is that they're slow. If somebody charges you, it's like you just shifted the whole, like you did the tablecloth thing, where you just pulled the tablecloth closer to you, and it thus pulled all the stuff toward you. No, it makes perfect sense. Like I have a similar feeling with Petrifex Elite. It's like, I want to charge you, but my army's slow. Oh, I see, you just lined up across the middle and just charged straight at my army, and like we're surprised when I smashed you. Cool, because like this is what my army does. It just does this one. It only knows this one move. All right, man. I can tell you're fading. I can tell you've been burning the candle at all ends. You've actually added, like, you've taken wax and melted candles onto the candle that you're already burning, so you could burn extra ends of the candle. Any last soapbox moments? Any, like, lasting thoughts you want to leave people with? Any completely random, totally off-topic subject you got to get off your chest? Anything along those lines?
Weirdly, even for someone who talks as much as I do, still loads, more than I would ever think. I don't know. Thanks for listening, and thanks for talking to me about it. Like, I recognize, and you said at the top of the show, actually maybe while we're off air, that my job sometimes is to be incendiary. Well, I don't really picture that as myself. I think that's actually, I think sometimes motivation is attached to me, which is more just who I am. But my purpose is always to try and make everyone, like, or to make this thing better that we all do, because it's had a really positive effect on my life. I've met really great people through it, and it's been really, really wonderful for me. And I hope to be able to create an environment where that exists for longer later, because I think it's a really great community. Like, and that's a cool thing. And I think that there is something maybe about tabletop wargaming which we don't maybe even recognize right now. I talked about it on the show a little bit, the mindfulness of just painting some dudes, just chilling out and zoning in on a game, especially in a very digital world. It's a really positive thing. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that I don't know what my point was. Yes, it's just a good thing.
I'm hoping to do good stuff. Yeah, I think is where you're going with it. That's the thing is, like, I've made more friends in, you know, my short time of Age of Sigmar than an entire lifetime of, like, various esports, various conventions, like Magic the Gathering, like all the other nerd stuff I've done. I've been a GM like 26 years in tabletop RPG. My tabletop RPG group is the same tabletop RPG group I befriended in college, and it really hasn't grown since. Whereas like Age of Sigmar, I can't help but not make friends playing this game because you have this intersectionality of people and personalities and stuff like that, where I think because of the mindfulness element that you were talking about, you can't help but like just be chiller and make those bonds. You know, like I'm not just, when I'm playing you in a game of Age of Sigmar, I'm not just playing you with your toys. I'm putting myself on the table, and this is me. This is myself on the table, and I'm gonna play you. And then, you know, just like how you talked about like learning people through fighting. Look at that callback. Learning people through fighting with Age of Sigmar. I'm essentially,
well done.
Yeah, I know. I'm a pro, man. You learn people playing Age of Sigmar. I know more about you because I see how the colors you picked your army, you know, the models you gravitate towards, the way you play the game. Are you aggressive? Do you have an aggressive like Alpha Strike style? Are you more of a shoot, you know, cagey shoot the heroes type? Like, how are you playing the game of Age of Sigmar? And I think that's beautiful. And giving people a platform to have extra exposure to that, think outside the box a little bit, I think is a good thing. This is obviously the end result. You know, this is a starting point, and I think that's perfect. Somebody out there is going to go, "Oh, Rob did this thing. Well, what if I do this thing? Or what if I take that and I, you know, I do want to have the sideboard and whatever. I'm making up arbitrary crap, but like, they take this and they run with it in their direction. You know, they add extra narrative elements to it, right? They do something with like named heroes and evolving storylines. If you take that same army from the Super Series 1 week and then in a few months you've played that army consistently, you know, something special. Maybe you get like a ban immune champion, whatever the narrative implications and the rules ends up looking like that precipitates down through the game. I think that stuff's just good.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I think this is good stuff, man. Thank you so much for being on. We should do this again sometime. I actually had a lot of fun talking to you, man.
It'll be fun. I'm not looking forward to the kicking I'm getting when I get home, because apparently this was again too late. This is my second night in a row, up till 1 a.m. But I don't know what to tell you. It's just you Americans have got just such dulcet tones that I will listen to post midnight. I think it honestly has been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. I know obviously a lot of it's a vehicle for talking about something I'm doing, but it's still really nice to be able to talk to you, and you've been able to, like, you've had a really constructive conversation with me, which I really appreciate. So thanks.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Twitter doesn't quite do it justice, so I'm happy we got to talk. All right, good night. All right, good night, everybody. Chat gang, you are the show within the show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. You're the reason we do this thing. Be excellent to yourselves. Be excellent to each other, and remember to drink your milk and pay your taxes. Good night, everybody. Good night, Rob.